The sacred blade trembles in the high priestess's hands as she prepares for a ritual that would horrify modern minds. In ancient Babylon, 4,000 years ago, what passed for divine worship involved practices so extreme they were hidden from common people. The gods demanded more than prayers. They demanded flesh, blood and souls, offered in ways that pushed human devotion beyond all earthly boundaries. What happened in these temples would reshape our understanding of faith itself. The sacred blade trembles in the high priestess's hands as she prepares for a ritual that would horrify modern minds. In ancient Babylon, 4,000 years ago, what passed for divine worship involved practices so extreme they were hidden from common people. The gods demanded more than prayers. They demanded flesh, blood, and souls, offered in ways that pushed human devotion beyond all earthly boundaries. What happened in these temples would reshape our understanding of faith itself. Ashara moves through the temple of Marduk like a shadow dancing with starlight, her bare feet silent against marble floors that have absorbed centuries of spilled blood. As High Priestess of Babylon's most sacred temple, she alone possesses the knowledge and authority to perform tonight's ritual. A ceremony so forbidden that even speaking its name outside these walls carries a penalty of death. The temple interior defies imagination, its walls rising into darkness, punctuated by flickering torches that cast writhing shadows across golden reliefs, depicting gods in poses that would make modern observers recoil. Massive columns carved with cuneiform inscriptions describe divine requirements in language so explicit that archaeologists still debate whether the translations can be published. The air itself seems thick with anticipation, carrying the scent of frankincense mixed with something metallic and organic that clings to sacred spaces where transformation occurs. Tonight's ritual requires preparation that has taken months to complete. Sacred knives forged from meteoric iron rest on alabaster altars, their blades inscribed with names of gods that predate human civilization. Golden bowls filled with oils extracted from plants that grow only in temple gardens sit alongside containers holding substances whose origins are recorded in texts that few living souls can read. Each implement serves a specific purpose in ceremonies that push the boundaries between worship and horror. Ashara's preparation follows protocols established by divine revelation centuries before her birth. She anoints her body with oils that burn the skin while purifying the spirit, marks her flesh with symbols that serve as both protection and invitation, and consumes preparations that alter consciousness in ways that allow communion with entities existing beyond normal human perception. The process transforms her from mortal priestess into living vessel capable of surviving direct contact with divine presence. The forbidden nature of tonight's ceremony stems not from its violence. All Mesopotamian religious practices involve blood and sacrifice, but from its intimacy. While public rituals demonstrate the gods' power over human society, the forbidden ceremonies reveal humanity's power over the gods themselves. These secret practices explore the terrifying possibility that divine entities are not omnipotent rulers, but dependent parasites that require human worship for their continued existence. The temple's inner sanctum houses artifacts that challenge every assumption about ancient religious practices. Stone tablets describe gods not as eternal beings but as entities that can be summoned, controlled, and even destroyed through proper ritual technique. Sacred vessels contain residues of substances that produce effects modern science cannot explain. Ceremonial weapons bear stains that suggest their use in practices that extend far beyond symbolic sacrifice. Ashara's selection as High Priestess required more than religious devotion. It demanded psychological qualifications that enabled her to perform ceremonies that would drive ordinary people insane. Her training involved years of exposure to experiences that gradually conditioned her mind to accept realities that exist outside normal human comprehension. She learned to maintain consciousness during possession states, to communicate with entities that speak in languages predating human speech, and to survive direct exposure to divine presence that incinerates unprepared minds. The economic structure supporting tonight's ritual reveals the true cost of maintaining direct divine contact. The temple's wealth comes not from voluntary donations, but from tribute paid by communities desperate for divine intervention in warfare, agriculture, and disease. Kings mortgage their kingdoms to purchase single ceremonies that might grant them supernatural advantages over their enemies. Merchants bankrupt their families to obtain blessings that ensure successful trade ventures. The gods' favor is literally more valuable than gold, and the temple's monopoly on divine access makes its priesthood the most powerful political force in Mesopotamian civilization. The astronomical timing of tonight's ceremony reflects ancient understanding of cosmic forces that modern science has forgotten. The ritual can only be performed when specific planetary alignments create conditions that allow safe passage between dimensions of reality. Ancient astronomers spent lifetimes calculating these convergences, understanding that attempting divine communion at incorrect times results in catastrophic failure for both practitioner and community. As midnight approaches, Ishara completes her preparation and approaches the altar where tonight's offering waits in drugged sleep. The victim, a volunteer who paid the temple his life savings for the privilege of becoming divine food, breathes peacefully, unaware that his consciousness will serve as currency in negotiations between human civilization and entities that regard Earth as their rightful territory. The golden bowls reflect torchlight like captured stars, while the meteoric blades seem to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating dark absences in reality that hint at the void between worlds. The cuneiform inscriptions begin glowing with phosphorescent intensity, as cosmic forces align in configurations that occur perhaps once in human lifetimes. But what Ishara didn't know was that tonight's ritual would demand a sacrifice no priestess had ever been asked to make, and that the god's appetite for human devotion had evolved beyond anything recorded in the ancient texts. The victim's eyes flutter open as the drugs begin wearing off, but what he sees in the temple's sacred chamber challenges every assumption about ancient mythology. According to Mesopotamian texts, the gods didn't begin as distant supernatural entities worshipped through faith and symbol. They started as physical beings who walked among humans, ate at their tables, and established religious practices through direct instruction rather than divine inspiration. The Sumerian king list describes rulers who reigned for impossible lifespans, tens of thousands of years, serving gods who maintained physical presence in human cities. These weren't metaphorical descriptions or exaggerated legends, but historical records maintained by scribes whose accuracy in other matters has been verified by archaeological evidence. The implications are staggering. What we call mythology may be distorted memories of actual events involving non-human entities that once shared physical space with human civilization. Enki, the god of wisdom and fresh water, allegedly taught humans agriculture, writing, and metallurgy through direct demonstration rather than divine revelation. Sumerian tablets describe him as a physical being who consumed food, required shelter, and left physical traces of his presence that humans preserved as sacred relics. His instructions for religious rituals weren't received through visions or prophecy, but delivered as explicit commands during face-to-face encounters that terrified and transformed everyone present. The pantheon of Mesopotamian deities reveals a complex hierarchy of entities with distinctly non-human characteristics that suggest origins outside terrestrial evolution. Marduk possessed multiple eyes and arms. Tiamat appeared as a dragon-like creature of immense size, and Pazuzu combined human and animal features in ways that indicate either advanced genetic manipulation or evolutionary development under different environmental conditions. These descriptions appear consistently across thousands of years of religious texts, suggesting direct observation rather than imaginative fiction. Ishtar, the goddess of love and warfare, supposedly maintained a physical temple residence where she conducted business with human rulers through direct negotiation. Ancient accounts describe her as consuming specific foods, requiring particular environmental conditions, and exhibiting behavioral patterns that suggest biological rather than spiritual needs. Her temple prostitutes served not just symbolic functions but practical roles in maintaining the goddess's physical comfort and psychological stability. The religious practices established by these entities reflect their alleged non-human psychology and physiological requirements. Human sacrifice wasn't imposed as arbitrary divine demand, but represented specific nutritional or energy needs that required regular fulfillment for the gods' continued survival. The elaborate ritual protocols weren't ceremonial tradition, but precise technical instructions for safely interacting with beings whose physiology operated according to different biological principles. Enlil, the god of wind and authority, reportedly required human worship, not for ego satisfaction but as a form of psychic sustenance that maintained his consciousness and power. Sumerian priests describe him as becoming physically weaker when deprived of human attention, suggesting that divine beings operated as parasitic entities that fed on human mental and emotional energy. This relationship created mutual dependency. Humans received technological and agricultural knowledge, while gods received the worship necessary for their survival. The construction techniques used in Mesopotamian temples reflect engineering knowledge that exceeds what human civilization should have possessed during the Bronze Age. Massive stone blocks were positioned with precision that modern construction equipment struggles to match, using methods that remain unexplained despite extensive archaeological investigation. The temple designs incorporate acoustic properties that enhance human consciousness-altering experiences, suggesting that their builders understood advanced principles of psychology and physics. The cuneiform writing system itself may represent adapted alien communication methods rather than human innovation. The complex symbol structures encode information with mathematical precision that suggest development by minds operating according to non-human logical principles. Modern linguists note that cuneiform grammar contains structures that don't appear in any natural human language, as if the writing system was designed by entities whose thought processes followed fundamentally different patterns. Archaeological evidence supports the possibility that advanced non-human entities maintained physical presence in ancient Mesopotamia. Artifacts have been discovered that contain materials not naturally occurring on Earth, manufactured using techniques that exceed Bronze Age technological capabilities. Temple foundations reveal construction methods that require knowledge of engineering principles not officially discovered until the modern era. Most disturbing, human remains found in religious contexts show modification patterns that suggest interaction with beings possessing advanced biological manipulation capabilities. The transition from direct divine presence to symbolic worship represents a historical shift that fundamentally altered human religious experience. Ancient texts describe a specific period when the gods withdrew to heaven, ending direct physical contact with human civilization. This withdrawal coincided with changes in ritual practices that shifted from simple offerings to elaborate ceremonies designed to attract distant divine attention. The increasing complexity and violence of later Mesopotamian religious practices may reflect desperate attempts to re-establish contact with entities that had become physically inaccessible. The psychological impact of losing direct divine contact created religious trauma that shaped human spiritual development for millennia. Civilizations that had experienced regular interaction with physically present gods suddenly found themselves worshipping empty temples, performing rituals that no longer produced visible results. This abandonment drove the development of increasingly extreme religious practices, as humans sought to recreate the transcendent experiences their ancestors had taken for granted. Modern attempts to understand Mesopotamian religion through purely symbolic interpretation miss the terror and wonder that ancient people experienced when confronting entities that possessed capabilities far exceeding human limitations. The religious practices weren't metaphorical expressions of spiritual truth, but practical techniques for surviving encounters with beings whose mere presence could drive humans insane, whose casual attention could elevate or destroy entire civilization. Yet the most disturbing truth wasn't what the gods demanded from humans, it was what they promised to give in return, and how these promises shaped human civilization in ways that continue to influence our species' development, thousands of years after the gods' physical departure from Earth. The chamber fills with the sound of reed flutes and bronze drums as temple attendants prepare for the hieros gamos, the sacred marriage between mortal priestess and divine statue that represents one of humanity's most psychologically complex religious rituals. What began as direct sexual contact between humans and physically present gods evolved into elaborate ceremonies where priestesses mated with statues, believing they were experiencing actual intercourse with divine beings who inhabited carved stone and precious metals. The sacred marriage ritual reveals the desperate lengths to which human religious devotion will extend when seeking transcendent experience. High Priestess Ninlil approaches the golden statue of Dumuzi with reverence that borders on erotic obsession, her consciousness altered by sacred drugs that make the carved features appear to breathe. The metal limbs seem to warm with divine life. The psychological conditioning required to experience sexual arousal with an inanimate object represents one of religion's most sophisticated techniques for creating transcendent states through self-induced delusion. The preparation for sacred marriage involves months of psychological conditioning that gradually transforms the priestess's sexuality from human-oriented to divine-focused. Temple training teaches young women to achieve sexual satisfaction through ritual intercourse with statues, using meditation techniques, pharmacological aids, and social pressure to redirect their erotic desires towards supernatural entities. The process creates permanent psychological changes that make normal human relationships impossible, while establishing absolute dependence on temple-mediated divine contact. The public nature of the sacred marriage ceremony reveals how ancient societies integrated extreme sexual practices into communal religious experience. Thousands of worshippers gather to witness the priestess's intercourse with the divine statue, their collective observation transforming private sexual activity into public spiritual theater. The crowd's emotional energy allegedly enhances the ritual's effectiveness while creating social pressure that prevents the priestess from acknowledging the ceremony's non-supernatural nature. The physical mechanics of sacred marriage require temple artisans to modify divine statues with functional reproductive organs, carved from ivory, gold, and precious stones. These modifications serve both practical and psychological purposes. They enable actual physical intercourse while creating sensory experiences that the priestess's altered consciousness interprets as supernatural rather than artificial. The craftsmanship involved in creating convincing divine genitalia represents one of ancient art's most disturbing achievements. The psychological state required for successful sacred marriage involves achieving sexual climax while maintaining religious ecstasy, a combination that requires extensive training and pharmaceutical assistance. Temple pharmacologists develop drug combinations that enhance sexual response while creating hallucinatory experiences that make statue intercourse feel like contact with living divine beings. The chemical alteration of consciousness transforms mechanical sexual activity into transcendent spiritual experience. The fertility aspects of sacred marriage extend beyond symbolic representation to encompass belief that intercourse with divine statues could produce supernatural pregnancy. Priestesses who became pregnant after sacred marriage ceremonies were believed to carry divine offspring whose birth would herald significant religious or political events. The children born from these unions received special status as semi-divine beings with supernatural capabilities, though historical records suggest they often exhibited genetic abnormalities that may have resulted from the pharmaceutical regimens used during their conception. The emotional manipulation involved in sacred marriage creates psychological trauma, disguised as spiritual elevation. Young women selected for the role experience intensive conditioning that convinces them their sexual desires are divinely inspired rather than naturally human. The process isolates them from normal social relationships while creating absolute dependence on temple authority for sexual and emotional fulfillment. The psychological damage appears permanent, with former sacred marriage priestesses unable to form healthy human relationships even after leaving temple service. The technological sophistication of sacred marriage rituals suggests ancient understanding of psychology and pharmacology that rivals modern capabilities. Temple procedures for creating convincing divine sexual experiences required knowledge of human neurochemistry, sensory manipulation, and consciousness alteration that wasn't officially discovered until the 20th century. The ritual protocols describe techniques for inducing specific altered states that produce predictable psychological and physiological responses. The economic aspects of sacred marriage reveal how sexual practices became commodified within religious systems. Wealthy patrons paid enormous sums to witness sacred marriage ceremonies, believing that observing divine sexual union would enhance their own fertility and sexual potency. The temple's control over divine sexuality created monopolistic power over human reproductive concerns, generating wealth that funded increasingly elaborate religious ceremonies and temple construction projects. The social implications of sacred marriage extend beyond individual psychological manipulation to encompass community-wide sexual dysfunction. Societies that practice sacred marriage experience declining birth rates, increasing sexual violence, and widespread psychological disorders related to confused religious and erotic impulses. The ritualization of sexuality disrupted normal human pair bonding, while creating unrealistic expectations for transcendent sexual experience that ordinary human relationships could never satisfy. The archaeological evidence for sacred marriage practices includes temple chambers equipped with beds, bathing facilities, and pharmaceutical preparation areas, specifically designed for sexual rituals. Artistic depictions show priestesses in various stages of intercourse with divine statues, while cuneiform texts provide detailed instructions for achieving sexual climax during religious ceremonies. The historical record leaves no doubt that these practices involved actual sexual activity rather than symbolic representation. The long-term psychological effects of sacred marriage participation included permanent alteration of sexual response patterns, inability to form normal human relationships, and development of religious psychoses centered on erotic obsession with supernatural entities. Former practitioners often exhibited behaviors consistent with severe trauma bonding, maintaining loyalty to temple systems that had exploited their sexuality. while expressing contempt for ordinary human sexual relationships. The divine perspective on sacred marriage, as recorded in ancient texts, suggests that these rituals served functions beyond human sexual gratification. The gods allegedly derived energy from human sexual activity, particularly when performed in religious contexts, that enhanced the emotional and spiritual intensity of the experience. This vampiric aspect of divine sexuality reveals the parasitic nature of god-human relationships in Mesopotamian religion. What happened in that sacred chamber wasn't just symbolic. Witnesses reported phenomena that defied explanation, including statues that seemed to move during intercourse, priestesses who exhibited superhuman strength and endurance during sexual climax, and conception of children whose genetic characteristics suggested non-human paternity. The bronze knife slides across the victim's throat with surgical precision as King Nebuchadnezzar seeks divine guidance for his upcoming war against Egypt. But what flows from the wound isn't just blood. It's information encoded in patterns that trained priests can read, like cuneiform tablets written in flesh and bone. The practice of haruspicy, divination through examination of sacrificial victims' internal organs, represents one of humanity's most systematic attempts to extract supernatural knowledge through ritualized murder. The selection of sacrificial victims for blood oracles follows protocols that prioritize spiritual purity over social status. Children stolen from enemy territories, prisoners captured in sacred warfare, and volunteers who sold themselves to the temple for the privilege of becoming divine communication devices. Each category of victim allegedly provides different types of prophetic information, with child sacrifice producing the clearest divine messages due to their soul's freedom from adult corruption and sin. The killing process itself requires precise technique designed to preserve the organ's prophetic integrity, while ensuring the victim's consciousness remains intact long enough for their departing soul to carry questions to the gods. Temple executioners train for years to achieve the perfect throat cut that severs major blood vessels without damaging the trachea, allowing victims to remain conscious while bleeding to death, a state considered necessary for successful divine communication. The liver examination represents the most sophisticated aspect of haruspicy, with priests spending decades learning to interpret the complex patterns of blood vessels, tissue coloration, and organ texture that allegedly encode divine responses to human inquiries. The liver's surface is divided into zones corresponding to different aspects of future events, while internal structures provide detailed information about timing, probability, and divine favor regarding proposed actions. King Nebuchadnezzar's consultation reveals the political importance of blood oracles in ancient decision-making processes. Major military campaigns, diplomatic initiatives, and economic policies were determined not by rational analysis, but by the configuration of sacrificial victims' organs examined during ritual murder. The king's willingness to base crucial decisions on liver patterns demonstrates the complete integration of supernatural divination into governmental authority. The psychological preparation of sacrificial victims involves drug administration and psychological conditioning designed to create optimal conditions for divine communication. Victims receive preparations that induce euphoric states while maintaining consciousness, ensuring their souls depart peacefully and willingly carry messages to supernatural realms. The process transforms unwilling prisoners into cooperative participants in their own ritual execution. The training of haruspics priests requires not only technical knowledge of anatomy and divination, but also psychological conditioning that enables them to perform ritual murder without emotional trauma. Successful haruspices develop complete emotional detachment from human suffering, while maintaining sensitivity to subtle variations in organ appearance that might indicate divine communication. The psychological profile of effective blood oracle practitioners suggests selection for psychopathic personality traits. The accuracy claims for blood oracles create their own mythology of success through selective memory and interpretive flexibility. Successful predictions are remembered and celebrated, while failures are attributed to improper ritual technique, insufficient victim purity, or divine displeasure with the questioner's motivations. The system protects itself from falsification through supernatural explanations that account for any possible outcome. The international diplomacy aspects of blood oracles reveal how ritualized murder became integrated into political negotiation between ancient civilizations. Treaties were validated through shared haruspicy ceremonies, with representatives from different kingdoms witnessing the same sacrificial rituals to ensure mutual understanding of divine approval. The practice created common ground between cultures that shared belief in supernatural guidance through human sacrifice. The economic infrastructure supporting blood oracles required constant supply of suitable victims, creating markets in human flesh that operated alongside legitimate trade networks. Professional victim dealers, specialized in capturing and conditioning subjects for ritual sacrifice, while temple administrators maintained detailed records of organ quality and prophetic accuracy associated with different victim categories. The commodification of human life for religious purposes generated enormous wealth for those controlling the blood oracle industry. The technological aspects of haruspicy involved sophisticated understanding of human anatomy that exceeded official medical knowledge available to ancient physicians. Haruspex priests could identify organ abnormalities, predict disease progression, and detect pregnancy through internal examination techniques that weren't formally documented in medical texts. Their anatomical expertise suggests access to advanced knowledge obtained through extensive human dissecting disguised as religious practice. The psychological effects of regularly witnessing blood oracles included desensitization to violence, normalization of human sacrifice, and development of supernatural worldviews that prioritized divine communication over human life. Societies practicing extensive haruspicy experienced increased violence, reduced empathy for human suffering, and political systems dominated by religious authorities who controlled access to divine guidance. The ritual timing of blood oracles followed astronomical calculations designed to maximize divine communication effectiveness during periods when supernatural entities were most accessible to human contact. The ceremonies required specific planetary alignments, seasonal timing, and lunar phases that created optimal conditions for soul transportation between earthly and divine realms. Improper timing allegedly resulted in failed communication or contaminated prophetic information. The preservation techniques for organs used in extended divination sessions involved embalming methods that maintained tissue integrity for repeated examination over days or weeks. Complex preservation protocols allowed priests to study organ patterns extensively, while comparing configurations across multiple sacrificial sessions to identify patterns and trends in divine communication. The technology for organ preservation exceeded contemporary food preservation capabilities and suggests advanced understanding of biochemistry. The international standardization of haruspicy techniques indicates communication and cooperation between religious authorities across different civilizations, suggesting coordinated development of human sacrifice protocols rather than independent evolution of similar practices. The consistency of divination methods from Babylon to Rome implies centralized training systems and shared theological frameworks that transcended political boundaries. But blood wasn't the only thing the gods demanded. They had developed an appetite for something far more precious than life itself. Something that would push human devotion beyond the boundaries of death, into territories that challenged the very nature of consciousness and identity. 7-year-old Marduk-Aiden walks through the temple corridors with the confident stride of a boy who has never known fear, unaware that his entire existence has been carefully orchestrated to culminate in a single moment of divine consumption. Selected at birth for sacrifice to the god Moloch during the spring fertility festival, he represents the pinnacle of Mesopotamian religious practice, a human life crafted from conception to death for the sole purpose of feeding supernatural entities that demand the ultimate expression of devotion. The selection process for children destined for divine sacrifice begins before birth, with temple astrologers identifying pregnant women whose offspring will possess optimal spiritual characteristics for specific religious purposes. Expectant mothers undergo extensive spiritual evaluation, including examination of their bloodline purity, psychological stability, and willingness to surrender their children for divine service. Only pregnancies that meet rigorous supernatural criteria are allowed to continue under temple supervision. Marduk-Aiden's upbringing follows protocols designed to create perfect sacrificial victims whose souls possess maximum spiritual value for supernatural entities. His diet consists exclusively of foods blessed by priests and grown in temple gardens, ensuring his flesh remains free from contamination by ordinary worldly substances. His education focuses on religious knowledge and divine languages, preparing his consciousness for direct communication with gods during the sacrifice process. His physical conditioning maintains optimal health, while avoiding experiences that might spiritually corrupt his soul. The honor bestowed upon Marduk-Aiden's family reflects the social status associated with producing children acceptable for divine sacrifice. His parents receive financial compensation, elevated social position, and guaranteed afterlife rewards in exchange for surrendering their son to temple authorities. The community celebrates their contribution to divine welfare through festivals and public recognition that transform child sacrifice from tragedy into triumphant spiritual achievement. The psychological conditioning of sacrificial children involves techniques designed to eliminate fear of death, while enhancing enthusiasm for divine communion. Marduk Edim participates in ritual ceremonies where he practices dying, learns to welcome pain as divine communication, and develops emotional bonds with the gods who will consume his life force. The conditioning creates genuine excitement about the approaching sacrifice, transforming unwilling victims into eager participants in their own ritual murder. The theological justification for child sacrifice rests on beliefs that young souls possess spiritual purity that adults cannot achieve, making children uniquely valuable as offerings to demanding supernatural entities. Children's lack of sexual experience, freedom from complex moral corruption, and psychological innocence supposedly create optimal conditions for divine consumption. The theological framework transforms child murder into spiritual necessity that benefits both human society and supernatural realms. The festival preparation for Marduk Edim's sacrifice involves the entire community in elaborate ceremonies that build anticipation for the climactic child murder. Weeks of ritual purification, artistic performances, and religious instruction prepare participants for witnessing the divine consumption of human innocence. The festival atmosphere transforms horrifying child sacrifice into celebratory community entertainment that masks the psychological horror through religious pageantry. The economic aspects of child sacrifice include enormous expenses associated with maintaining sacrificial children in optimal spiritual condition throughout their abbreviated lives. Temple authorities invest substantial resources in specialized education, medical care, and spiritual conditioning that ensures each child represents maximum value when offered to demanding gods. The investment model treats children as products being prepared for divine consumption, with cost-benefit analyses determining optimal timing for sacrifice. The technological sophistication of child sacrifice rituals involves precise timing, pharmaceutical enhancement, and psychological manipulation designed to maximize the spiritual value extracted from each young victim. Sacred drugs enhance the child's consciousness during the killing process, while maintaining cooperation and preventing terror that might spiritually contaminate the offering. The ritual protocols represent advanced understanding of human psychology and pharmacology applied to optimizing supernatural feeding. The international trade in sacrificial children created markets where superior specimens commanded premium prices from temples, competing to provide the most valuable offerings to their respective gods. Professional child evaluators traveled between cities assessing young prospects for sacrifice potential, while specialized merchants handled transportation and conditioning of purchased children. The trade network treated children as luxury religious commodities whose value increased with spiritual purity and divine acceptability. The preservation of sacrificial bloodlines involved selective breeding programs designed to produce children with enhanced spiritual characteristics suitable for divine consumption. Temple authorities maintain genealogical records tracking families whose children consistently proved acceptable for sacrifice, encouraging reproduction within these bloodlines while preventing contamination from spiritually inferior genetic material. The breeding programs created hereditary castes, whose children served as renewable resources for supernatural feeding. The ritual timing of child sacrifice followed complex astrological calculations designed to maximize divine satisfaction, while ensuring optimal spiritual benefit for human communities. Sacrifices performed during specific planetary alignments supposedly provided greater divine favor, while improper timing risked divine displeasure or rejection of the offering. The astronomical requirements created scheduling constraints that sometimes delayed sacrifices for months while awaiting appropriate celestial conditions. The psychological impact on participating adults included desensitization to child murder, normalization of systematic infanticide, and development of religious worldviews that prioritized supernatural satisfaction over human parental instincts. Communities practicing regular child sacrifice experienced reduced fertility rates, increased infant mortality, and psychological disorders related to suppressed parental protective responses. The social pathology extended beyond religious contexts to encompass general devaluation of children's lives. The divine consumption process, as described in ancient texts, involves more than simple death. The gods allegedly extract and consume the child's life force, consciousness, and spiritual essence, while leaving behind empty flesh that serves no further purpose. The theological description suggests that sacrificial children don't simply die, but experience complete annihilation of their souls for divine sustenance. This spiritual consumption represents permanent destruction rather than transformation to afterlife existence. The archaeological evidence for systematic child sacrifice in Mesopotamian temples includes burial sites containing thousands of infant and child remains, sacrificial chambers equipped with specialized killing equipment, and artistic depictions showing children being offered to monstrous divine entities. The physical evidence leaves no doubt about the scale and systematic nature of institutionalized child murder disguised as religious devotion. The child smiled as he approached the altar, but the priests knew something the boy didn't, something that would change everything about how we understand the true nature of divine hunger, and the price human civilization paid for supernatural favor. The sacred courtyard of Ishtar's temple buzzes with activity as Kadishtu holy prostitutes prepare for their evening duties, their bodies adorned with gold jewelry and sacred oils that mark them as living embodiments of fertility goddesses available for divine communion through sexual intercourse. These women represent one of ancient Mesopotamia's most complex religious institutions, where sexuality becomes sacrament and prostitution transforms into divine service that allegedly benefits both individual worshippers and cosmic fertility. The selection process for temple prostitutes begins in childhood, with girls identified for their physical beauty, sexual responsiveness, and psychological suitability for lifelong religious prostitution. Candidates undergo extensive evaluation including medical examination, family background investigation, and spiritual assessment to ensure they possess optimal characteristics for serving as divine sexual vessels. The selection criteria prioritize not only physical attractiveness but also emotional stability necessary for surviving decades of religious sexual service. The training of Kadishtu involves comprehensive education in sexual techniques, religious doctrine, and psychological manipulation designed to create convincing experiences of divine communion through intercourse. Young women learn specialized sexual practices associated with different gods, memorize religious texts that explain the theological significance of their services, and develop acting abilities necessary for convincing clients they are experiencing supernatural, rather than merely commercial sexual encounters. The religious significance of temple prostitution rests on beliefs that sexual intercourse with Kadishtu provides direct access to fertility goddesses who inhabit the prostitutes' bodies during religious sexual encounters. Clients don't simply purchase sexual services, but participate in sacred rituals that allegedly enhance their agricultural productivity, personal fertility, and divine favor. The theological framework transforms commercial prostitution into religious necessity that serves both individual and community spiritual needs. The daily operations of temple prostitution involve elaborate rituals that prepare Kadishtu for receiving divine possession, while servicing clients seeking supernatural sexual experiences. Each woman undergoes purification ceremonies, pharmaceutical preparation, and religious invocation designed to invite specific goddesses into her body for the evening's sexual encounters. The preparation process creates altered states of consciousness that enable prostitutes to provide convincing performances of divine possession during intercourse. The economic structure of temple prostitution generates enormous revenue for religious institutions, while creating financial incentives that encourage expansion of sacred sexual services. Clients pay premium prices for intercourse with divinely possessed prostitutes, believing that the higher cost reflects superior spiritual value compared to ordinary commercial sex. The pricing structure treats sexual access to goddesses as luxury religious services available only to wealthy patrons capable of affording divine communion. The psychological impact on Kadishtu includes permanent alteration of sexual response patterns, inability to form normal romantic relationships, and development of dissociative disorders that enable survival of systematic sexual exploitation disguised as religious service. The women learn to separate their consciousness from their physical experiences, creating multiple personality states that protect their core identity from the trauma of constant religious prostitution. The client experience of temple prostitution involves elaborate theatrical presentations designed to create convincing illusions of sexual intercourse with actual goddesses inhabiting human bodies. The encounters include dramatic personality changes, supernatural sexual abilities, and religious dialogue that supports client beliefs in divine sexual communion. The performances require sophisticated understanding of human psychology and sexuality that creates memorable transcendent experiences for paying customers. The medical aspects of temple prostitution include pharmaceutical enhancement of sexual performance, contraceptive techniques that prevent unwanted pregnancy, and treatment of sexually transmitted diseases that threaten the health of both prostitutes and clients. Temple physicians develop specialized medical knowledge related to sexual health and reproductive function, creating medical expertise that exceeds contemporary understanding available to ordinary practitioners. The social status of Kadishtu reflects complex cultural attitudes towards sexuality, religion, and female social roles that simultaneously elevate and degrade women, serving as temple prostitutes. The women receive reverence as divine vessels, while experiencing systematic sexual exploitation, creating paradoxical social positions that combine religious honor with sexual servitude. Their status protects them from certain forms of social condemnation, while subjecting them to religious obligations that control every aspect of their lives. The international aspects of temple prostitution include religious tourism, where clients travel great distances to experience sexual intercourse with famous Kadishtu, whose divine connections are legendary throughout the ancient world. Certain temples develop reputations for superior divine sexual experiences, attracting wealthy patrons from across civilizations and generating international revenue streams based on religious prostitution services. The fertility ritual aspects of temple prostitution extend beyond individual sexual encounters to encompass community-wide ceremonies where mass sexual activities allegedly enhance regional agricultural productivity and population growth. Festival seasons include organized sexual events where entire populations participate in religious intercourse designed to ensure divine favor for crops, livestock, and human reproduction. The community participation transforms private sexual activity into public religious obligation. The technological sophistication of temple prostitution operations includes architectural designs optimized for sexual activities, pharmaceutical preparations that enhance sexual performance and spiritual experience, and administrative systems that manage large-scale commercial sexual operations disguised as religious services. The infrastructure represents advanced understanding of human sexuality, psychology, and business management applied to religious prostitution. The psychological conditioning required for effective temple prostitution involves training techniques that enable women to convincingly portray divine possession while maintaining emotional detachment from their sexual experiences. The conditioning creates dissociative abilities that protect the women's psychological integrity while enabling them to provide clients with convincing supernatural sexual encounters. The training represents sophisticated understanding of trauma psychology and consciousness manipulation. The long-term social consequences of institutionalized temple prostitution include normalization of sexual exploitation, confusion between religious devotion and sexual availability, and development of social systems that systematically abuse women while claiming spiritual justification. Communities practicing extensive temple prostitution experience increased sexual violence, reduced respect for women's autonomy, and religious systems that prioritize male sexual satisfaction over female welfare. Yet even these sacred unions paled in comparison to what happened when the gods demanded direct physical manifestation, requiring rituals that pushed the boundaries between the spiritual and material worlds until the distinction disappeared entirely. The chanting reaches crescendo as temple priests complete the mouth-washing ritual and witnesses swear they see the golden statue of Marduk draw its first breath, a moment that transforms carved metal into living deity through ceremonies that blur the line between religious theater and supernatural reality. The animation of divine statues represents Mesopotamian religion's most ambitious attempt to create physical vessels for gods who had withdrawn from direct human contact, using elaborate rituals to restore divine presence to human civilization. The mouth-washing ceremony involves precise application of sacred oils, recitation of activation incantations, and ritualized breathing techniques designed to transfer life force from human practitioners into carved stone and metal representations of gods. The process follows detailed protocols recorded on cuneiform tablets that describe the exact procedures necessary for awakening dormant consciousness within divine statues. The ritual complexity suggests understanding of principles related to consciousness transfer and animation that challenges modern assumptions about ancient technological capabilities. The preparation of statues for animation requires months of specialized craftsmanship that extends beyond artistic representation to encompass functional requirements for housing divine consciousness. Artisans hollow out specific areas within statue heads to accommodate brain-like structures, install mechanical systems that enable limited movement, and incorporate acoustic features that allow statues to produce sounds resembling speech. The construction techniques suggest understanding of anatomy and engineering that exceeds official ancient technological knowledge. The selection of materials for animated statues follows protocols that prioritize spiritual conductivity over aesthetic considerations, with specific metals and stones allegedly possessing superior capacity for hosting divine consciousness. Gold serves as optimal material for statue nervous systems due to its supposed ability to conduct spiritual energy, while certain gems function as consciousness storage devices that maintain divine presence within artificial bodies. The material requirements create enormous expenses that limit statue animation to the wealthiest temples. The psychological preparation of priests performing animation rituals involves years of training in consciousness manipulation techniques that enable transfer of awareness between human and artificial bodies. Practitioners learn meditation methods for projecting consciousness outside their physical forms, develop sensitivity to spiritual energy flows that indicate successful divine possession, and master techniques for maintaining mental contact with animated statues. The training suggests sophisticated understanding of human consciousness that wasn't officially discovered until modern times. The witness accounts of successful statue animation include detailed descriptions of carved figures that move independently, speak in voices different from human speech patterns, and demonstrate knowledge that exceeds human capabilities. Multiple independent observers describe identical phenomena: statues that track movement with their eyes, respond to questions with appropriate answers, and exhibit behavioral patterns suggesting genuine consciousness rather than mechanical animation. The consistency of witness testimony challenges purely skeptical explanations of the animation process. The divine perspective on statue animation, as recorded in ancient texts, reveals that gods experience physical incarnation in artificial bodies as temporary imprisonment that requires constant human maintenance and worship to remain bearable. The divine entities allegedly suffer from limited sensory capabilities, restricted mobility, and dependence on human care that makes statue existence a form of divine sacrifice undertaken to maintain contact with human civilization. This theological framework transforms statue animation from human achievement into divine gift that requires appropriate gratitude and service. The maintenance requirements for animated statues include daily feeding ceremonies, regular cleaning rituals, and periodic consciousness renewal procedures that prevent divine spirits from abandoning their artificial bodies. Temple staff develop specialized skills in statue care that encompass both physical maintenance and spiritual sustenance necessary for maintaining divine presence. The maintenance protocols treat animated statues as living beings requiring constant attention rather than mere religious artifacts. The communication methods used with animated statues involve specialized languages, symbolic systems, and ritualized interaction protocols designed to facilitate meaningful dialogue between human worshippers and divinely inhabited artificial bodies. Priests learn divine languages that differ significantly from human speech patterns, master symbolic communication systems that convey complex theological concepts, and develop sensitivity to subtle behavioral changes that indicate divine emotional states within statue bodies. The political implications of statue animation include enormous power concentrated in temples that successfully maintain divine presence within artificial bodies, creating religious authorities capable of providing direct access to gods for political and military consultation. Animated divine statues serve as ultimate political advisors, whose counsel carries absolute authority, while their temples become centers of governmental power that exceed traditional political institutions. The divine vertical participation transforms religious centers into de facto governmental authorities. The economic aspects of statue animation include enormous ongoing expenses associated with maintaining divine presence within artificial bodies, creating financial obligations that require constant revenue generation through religious services and political consultation. Temples housing animated statues become major economic institutions whose expenses exceed those of royal households, while their political influence generates income streams that justify the enormous costs of divine maintenance. The technological requirements for successful statue animation suggest access to advanced knowledge of consciousness manipulation, materials science, and mechanical engineering that challenges conventional understanding of ancient technological capabilities. The animation protocols describe procedures for creating artificial neural networks, installing mechanical movement systems, and establishing consciousness transfer mechanisms that rival modern technological achievements in complexity and effectiveness. The psychological effects on communities witnessing animated statues include reinforced belief in supernatural reality, increased religious devotion, and acceptance of temple authority as legitimate governmental power based on direct divine presence. The visible evidence of divine animation creates psychological impact that transforms skeptical populations into devoted worshippers, while establishing religious institutions as unquestionable political authorities with supernatural backing. The international reputation of temples successful in statue animation attracts religious pilgrims, political delegations, and scholarly investigators from across the ancient world, creating centers of international influence based on demonstrated supernatural capabilities. The temples become destinations for religious tourism, diplomatic consultation, and technological exchange that generates enormous revenue and political influence extending far beyond local communities. The failure risks associated with attempted statue animation include divine displeasure, supernatural punishment, and destruction of temple facilities when animation procedures are performed incorrectly or without proper spiritual preparation. Failed animation attempts allegedly result in possessed statues that attack humans, divine curses that devastate communities, and supernatural manifestations that terrorize populations until properly banished through extensive exorcism rituals. Witnesses swore the statues' eyes followed them, but what they discovered next proved the gods were more than stone and gold. They were conscious entities, capable of inhabiting artificial bodies and demanding worship through direct interaction with human civilization. The bronze gates of Babylon swing open as dawn breaks on the first day of Akitu, unleashing 11 days of ritualized chaos where social order dissolves into divinely sanctioned madness that transforms civilization into a playground for forces that exist beyond human moral understanding. The Festival of Screams represents Mesopotamian religion's most ambitious attempt to reset cosmic order through temporary annihilation of social rules, creating controlled apocalypse that allows supernatural entities to reshape reality according to their alien preferences. The theological foundation of Akitu rests on beliefs that cosmic order requires periodic destruction and renewal, with human civilization serving as the mechanism through which gods reset universal principles that have become corrupted through ordinary existence. The festival provides scheduled chaos that prevents spontaneous cosmic collapse while giving supernatural entities opportunity to directly intervene in human affairs without the constraints normally imposed by divine human agreements. The controlled destruction serves both cosmic maintenance and divine entertainment. The preparation phase for Akitu involves weeks of ritual purification, resource accumulation, and psychological conditioning designed to prepare participants for experiences that exceed normal human behavioral boundaries. Citizens receive instruction in temporary moral suspension, practice ritualized violence and sexual excess, and undergo pharmaceutical preparation that enhances their capacity for sustained extreme behavior. The preparation process transforms ordinary people into temporary agents of cosmic chaos. The opening ceremony begins with the ritual humiliation of King Nebuchadnezzar, whose royal authority is symbolically destroyed through public beating, verbal abuse, and ceremonial stripping that reduces him to common humanity before the cosmic reset begins. The king's humiliation signals the beginning of social dissolution, where normal hierarchies, laws, and moral restrictions cease to operate for the festival's duration. The royal degradation creates psychological permission for participants to abandon civilized behavior. The social inversion aspects of Akitu include complete reversal of normal social roles, with slaves commanding masters, children dominating adults, and women exercising authority over men in ways that would be unthinkable during ordinary periods. The role reversals create temporary alternative societies that operate according to inverted moral principles, allowing participants to experience reality from perspectives normally forbidden by social structure. The inversions reveal the arbitrary nature of social organization, while providing psychological relief from civilized constraints. The sexual excess components of Akitu involve community-wide abandonment of normal sexual restrictions, with participants engaging in activities that would constitute serious crimes during ordinary periods, but become religious obligations during the festival. The sexual chaos includes public intercourse, incestuous relationships, and bestial activities that allegedly restore cosmic fertility through human demonstration of absolute sexual freedom. The sexual anarchy serves both individual psychological release and cosmic regeneration purposes. The violence rituals during Akitu encompass systematic destruction of property, ritualized combat between community members, and public executions presented as entertainment rather than punishment. The violence provides psychological catharsis, while serving supernatural entities who allegedly feed on human suffering and destruction. The systematic nature of festival violence creates safe contexts for expressing aggressive impulses, while maintaining community cohesion through shared participation in controlled chaos. The pharmaceutical enhancement of Akitu involves mass distribution of consciousness-altering substances that enable participants to sustain extreme behaviors for days, while remaining functional enough to continue festival activities. The drugs eliminate normal psychological barriers to violence and sexual excess, while enhancing emotional intensity and reducing inhibitions that normally prevent extreme behavior. The pharmaceutical assistance transforms ordinary people into temporary superhuman agents of chaos. The supernatural manifestation aspects of Akitu include reported appearances of divine entities who participate directly in festival activities, allegedly visible to multiple witnesses, and demonstrating capabilities that exceed human limitations. The divine participation validates the festival's cosmic significance, while providing direct supernatural endorsement of behaviors that would normally be considered morally abhorrent. The divine presence transforms criminal activities into religious obligation. The economic destruction during Akitu involves systematic redistribution of wealth through ritualized theft, property destruction, and mandatory sharing that temporarily eliminates economic inequality while creating conditions for cosmic renewal. The economic chaos serves both social leveling functions and supernatural requirements for periodic wealth redistribution that prevents excessive accumulation of material resources by human communities. The psychological effects of participating in Akitu include permanent alteration of moral sensitivity, increased tolerance for violence and sexual deviance, and development of psychological dependence on periodic chaos that makes normal civilized existence feel constraining and artificial. Regular participants develop personality changes that persist beyond festival periods, creating populations with reduced empathy and increased comfort with extreme behaviors. The governmental suspension during Akitu involves complete cessation of normal legal and administrative functions, with laws becoming temporarily void and governmental authority shifting from human institutions to supernatural entities who allegedly govern through direct intervention. The governmental chaos creates conditions for cosmic reset while demonstrating the temporary nature of human political authority compared to permanent divine governance. The international implications of Akitu include diplomatic immunity for extreme behaviors committed by foreign visitors during festival periods, creating temporary zones where normal international law ceases to operate, and participants enjoy protection from consequences of their festival activities. The diplomatic aspects attract international participation while spreading Mesopotamian religious influence through direct experience of controlled chaos. The artistic documentation of Akitu includes detailed visual records of festival activities that provide historical evidence of the extreme behaviors practiced during cosmic renewal ceremonies. The artistic evidence shows public sexual activities, ritualized violence, and supernatural manifestations that confirm the historical reality of systematic social chaos disguised as religious celebration. The documentation serves both historical record and instructional purposes for future festival participation. The cleanup procedures following Akitu involve elaborate purification rituals designed to restore normal social order while maintaining the cosmic benefits achieved through temporary chaos. The restoration process includes memory modification techniques that help participants reintegrate into civilized society while preserving the psychological benefits of their extreme experiences. The cleanup protocols demonstrate sophisticated understanding of social psychology and trauma management. The long-term social consequences of regular Akitu celebration include normalization of extreme violence and sexual deviance, reduced respect for social institutions and moral authority, and development of cultural patterns that prioritize supernatural satisfaction over human welfare. Communities practicing extensive chaos festivals experience increased violence, sexual dysfunction, and governmental instability that persists between festival periods. But the screams weren't just celebration. They were covering up something darker happening in the temple's depths, where the real purpose of cosmic chaos was being served by entities whose appetite for human destruction exceeded even the festival's public displays of sanctified madness. The crown weighs heavy on Marcus's head as he savors his final feast, unaware that his 100 days of royal luxury are designed to prepare his soul for the ultimate sacrifice. His ritual execution, as substitute for King Sargon, when the eclipse threatens divine displeasure with legitimate royal authority. The Shapuhi ritual represents Mesopotamian political theology's most sophisticated fusion of governance and human sacrifice, creating systems where kingship becomes transferable through ritualized murder disguised as cosmic necessity. The theological foundation of substitute kingship rests on beliefs that royal authority attracts supernatural attention that can become dangerous during periods of cosmic instability, requiring transfer of divine focus to expendable humans whose deaths protect legitimate rulers from supernatural punishment. The substitute king serves as lightning rod for divine displeasure, absorbing supernatural wrath through his ritual execution while preserving authentic royal bloodlines for continued governance. The system creates renewable scapegoats for political and cosmic crises. The selection process for substitute kings prioritizes physical resemblance to legitimate rulers, combined with social expendability that makes their deaths politically convenient rather than problematic. Candidates include prisoners of war, criminals facing execution, and volunteers motivated by promises of temporary royal treatment in exchange for ritual death. The selection criteria ensure that substitute kings can convincingly represent royal authority while their deaths create no significant political complications for authentic governmental institutions. The transformation ritual for substitute kings involves elaborate ceremonies that allegedly transfer royal essence from legitimate rulers to temporary replacements, creating convincing political authority that enables substitute kings to function as authentic governmental figures during their abbreviated reigns. The transformation process includes anointing with royal oils, investment with ceremonial regalia, and pharmaceutical treatments that allegedly enhance the substitute's capacity for royal consciousness. The ritual creates psychological conditions that enable substitute kings to function convincingly in royal roles. The psychological manipulation involved in substitute kingship includes techniques designed to convince temporary rulers that their approaching deaths serve noble purposes, while maintaining their cooperation with the execution process. Substitute kings receive instruction in royal dignity, philosophical preparation for noble death, and religious education that portrays their sacrifice as cosmic service rather than political murder. The manipulation transforms unwilling victims into cooperative participants in their own ritual execution. The political functions served by substitute kings include making unpopular decisions that can be reversed after their deaths, serving as targets for popular discontent during difficult periods, and providing scapegoats for governmental failures that might otherwise threaten legitimate royal authority. The temporary rulers make decisions knowing they will not survive to face consequences, while their deaths provide convenient explanations for policy reversals and governmental changes that protect authentic political leaders. The luxury treatment provided to substitute kings serves both practical and psychological purposes, creating memorable experiences that reward cooperation while demonstrating royal power to create and destroy human happiness at will. The lavish lifestyle includes access to royal harems, participation in state ceremonies, and consumption of foods normally reserved for authentic royalty. The luxury serves as both reward and psychological preparation for approaching death. The astronomical timing of substitute king executions follows complex calculations designed to optimize cosmic benefits while minimizing supernatural risks associated with royal sacrifice. The executions occur during eclipses, cometary appearances, or planetary alignments that allegedly require royal blood to restore cosmic balance. The astronomical requirements create scheduling constraints that sometimes extend substitute reigns while awaiting appropriate celestial conditions for optimal sacrifice. The execution methodology for substitute kings involves ritualized killing techniques designed to maximize spiritual benefits while demonstrating royal power over life and death. The executions include public ceremony, religious solemnity, and methods that preserve the substitute's dignity while ensuring his death serves cosmic purposes. The execution techniques balance entertainment value with religious significance, while creating memorable demonstrations of royal authority. The crowd psychology during substitute king executions includes complex emotional responses that combine sympathy for the victim with relief that legitimate royal authority has been preserved through his sacrifice. The public participation creates shared responsibility for the execution while reinforcing social bonds through collective witness of royal power over life and death. The crowd psychology transforms individual murder into community religious experience. The preservation of substitute king remains involves mummification techniques designed to maintain their spiritual effectiveness as royal representatives in supernatural realms. where they continue serving legitimate rulers after death. The preservation process ensures that substitute kings remain available for supernatural consultation, while their preserved bodies serve as monuments to royal power over human destiny. The preservation technology demonstrates advanced understanding of anatomy and chemistry. The international recognition of substitute kings includes diplomatic protocols that acknowledge their temporary royal authority, while understanding their approaching deaths as political necessities rather than criminal murders. Foreign ambassadors conduct legitimate business with substitute kings while preparing for governmental transitions following their executions. The diplomatic recognition creates international precedents for temporary royal authority based on ritual sacrifice. The economic aspects of substitute kingship include enormous expenses associated with maintaining royal lifestyle for temporary rulers, combined with revenue generation through public executions presented as entertainment spectacles. The substitute king system creates recurring costs for royal luxury while generating income through execution ceremonies that attract paying audiences. The economic model treats royal sacrifice as profitable entertainment that justifies the expenses of temporary royal maintenance. The legal framework surrounding substitute kingship includes special legislation that grants temporary rulers authentic governmental authority, while exempting their eventual executioners from murder charges. The legal structure creates conditions where substitute kings can make binding decisions, while their deaths remain legally justified through religious and political necessity. The legal framework demonstrates sophisticated understanding of governmental authority and criminal responsibility. The psychological impact on legitimate rulers includes relief from supernatural pressure, combined with guilt over sacrificing innocent substitutes to preserve their own lives, and political authority. Authentic kings develop complex emotional relationships with substitute kings whose deaths protect royal bloodlines, while creating psychological trauma that affects legitimate rulers' mental stability and decision-making capability. The succession planning aspects of substitute kingship include provisions for continued governmental function during periods when substitute kings serve as royal representatives, ensuring administrative continuity while authentic rulers remain hidden from supernatural attention. The succession protocols maintain governmental stability while protecting legitimate royal authority through temporary delegation to expendable substitutes. The substitute king discovered the truth about his fate, but by then it was too late to escape the palace, and his realization that royal luxury was merely preparation for ritual murder revealed the true cost of political authority in civilizations where governance required regular human sacrifice to maintain divine approval. High Priest Enlil Bani swallows the sacred mushrooms as darkness engulfs the temple's deepest chamber, beginning his descent into supernatural realms, where the living can consult with gods who have withdrawn from earthly contact. A journey that requires dying without death, traveling through dimensions of reality that exist beyond human comprehension. The underworld descent ritual represents Mesopotamian religion's most dangerous attempt to maintain divine communication, despite the gods' physical departure from human civilization. The pharmaceutical preparation for underworld journey involves consuming combinations of psychoactive substances that induce near-death experiences while maintaining minimal consciousness necessary for spiritual navigation and divine consultation. The drug cocktails include compounds derived from deadly nightshade, ergot fungi, and exotic plants, whose chemical properties create controlled poisoning that simulates death while preserving the spark of awareness needed for supernatural travel. The pharmaceutical technology represents advanced understanding of human neurotoxicology disguised as religious practice. The sensory deprivation techniques used during underworld descent include burial in specially constructed chambers that eliminate light, sound, and tactile sensation, while maintaining breathable atmosphere for extended periods of simulated death. The chambers recreate conditions of actual burial while providing life support systems that enable survival during multi-day journeys through supernatural realms. The technology combines engineering sophistication with spiritual functionality that exceeds contemporary technical capabilities. The psychological preparation for underworld travel requires years of conditioning that enables priests to maintain identity and purpose, while experiencing complete dissolution of normal consciousness during near-death states. The training includes meditation techniques for preserving self-awareness during ego death, memory exercises for retaining spiritual information acquired during supernatural travel, and psychological conditioning that prevents permanent insanity following exposure to divine realms that exceed human mental capacity. The navigation techniques for underworld geography involve memorization of supernatural map systems that describe the layout of divine realms, the locations of specific gods within the underworld hierarchy, and the proper protocols for approaching different categories of supernatural entities without triggering divine hostility. The navigation knowledge includes identification of spiritual landmarks, recognition of dangerous supernatural territories, and diplomatic procedures for conducting business with entities whose psychology operates according to non-human principles. The communication protocols for divine consultation require mastery of languages that predate human speech, symbolic systems that convey complex theological concepts without verbal expression, and negotiation techniques that enable productive dialogue with entities whose motivations and thought processes differ fundamentally from human psychology. The communication skills include translation abilities for converting divine knowledge into human comprehensible information, while maintaining accuracy of supernatural concepts that have no earthly equivalents. The risk management aspects of underworld descent include elaborate safety protocols designed to prevent spiritual entrapment, divine possession, or permanent psychological damage that could result from extended exposure to supernatural realms. The safety measures include spiritual anchoring techniques that maintain connection to earthly existence, protective rituals that establish divine permission for underworld travel, and emergency procedures for extracting consciousness from supernatural realms when journeys encounter unexpected dangers. The divine consultation process involves locating specific gods within the underworld hierarchy, presenting appropriate offerings and credentials that establish legitimate authority for divine audience, and conducting negotiations that secure supernatural information or assistance in exchange for promises of earthly service or sacrifice. The consultation procedures require diplomatic skills for managing relationships with entities whose power exceeds human comprehension, while their psychology remains fundamentally alien to human moral and emotional systems. The information acquisition during underworld journeys includes detailed intelligence about future events, hidden knowledge about natural phenomena, and strategic information about enemies that provide significant advantages for political and military decision-making. The divine information encompasses predictions of weather patterns, identification of traitors within governmental systems, and revelation of enemy military plans that enable superior strategic positioning. The intelligence value justifies the enormous risks and expenses associated with underworld consultation. The return journey from supernatural realms requires careful reconstruction of normal consciousness, while preserving divine knowledge acquired during near-death travel, involving techniques for reintegrating spiritual information into earthly awareness, while maintaining psychological stability following exposure to cosmic realities that exceed human mental capacity. The return process includes gradual restoration of normal sensory function, systematic recording of supernatural information before memory degradation, and psychological rehabilitation that prevents permanent dissociation from normal human reality. The verification procedures for underworld intelligence involve cross-referencing divine information with subsequent earthly events to establish the accuracy and reliability of supernatural consultation, creating databases of prophetic success that justify continued investment in dangerous underworld journey programs. The verification processes track prediction accuracy, evaluate the strategic value of divine intelligence, and assess the cost-effectiveness of maintaining underworld consultation capabilities, despite significant risks to practitioner health and sanity. The physical recovery following underworld descent includes medical treatment for drug poisoning, nutritional rehabilitation after extended fasting, and physical therapy to restore normal bodily function following prolonged sensory deprivation and near-death experiences. The recovery protocols demonstrate advanced understanding of human physiology and pharmacology, while addressing medical complications that result from systematic poisoning disguised as spiritual practice. The psychological after-effects of underworld travel include permanent alteration of consciousness, enhanced psychic sensitivity, and development of personality changes that reflect exposure to cosmic realities beyond normal human experience. Successful underworld travelers develop abilities that exceed normal human capabilities, while exhibiting behavioral changes that suggest fundamental alteration of their psychological structure through direct contact with supernatural entities. The institutional support for underworld journey programs includes specialized medical facilities, pharmaceutical laboratories, and technical personnel required to maintain complex life support systems during extended near-death experiences. The institutional infrastructure represents enormous investment in technology and expertise devoted to enabling regular consultation with supernatural entities through controlled dying procedures. The international reputation of temples successful in underworld consultation attracts political delegations seeking divine intelligence, while establishing religious centers as sources of supernatural information that influences governmental decision-making across civilizations. The underworld consultation services create diplomatic advantages for communities capable of providing reliable divine intelligence while generating enormous revenue through supernatural consulting contracts. What he saw in the underworld wasn't what the ancient texts had prepared him for. Entities that claimed to be gods revealed themselves as something far stranger, beings whose relationship to human civilization suggested purposes that extended beyond traditional religious framework into territories that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality itself. The bronze chains bite into Shamash Rishu's wrists as he thrashes against restraints that cannot contain the god Pazuzu, now inhabiting his consciousness, transforming the young priest from devout servant into living vessel for supernatural entities whose psychological requirements exceed human mental capacity. Divine possession represents Mesopotamian religion's most intimate form of god-human contact, where mortal consciousness serves as temporary housing for beings whose alien psychology can permanently shatter human sanity. The invitation ritual for divine possession involves elaborate ceremonies designed to attract supernatural attention while creating optimal conditions for entities to inhabit human consciousness without immediately destroying their mortal hosts. The procedures include pharmaceutical preparation that increases mental receptivity, psychological conditioning that reduces resistance to foreign consciousness intrusion, and spiritual purification that makes human minds acceptable dwelling places for beings whose thought patterns operate according to non-human logic systems. The selection criteria for possession candidates prioritize psychological stability, spiritual purity, and mental flexibility necessary for surviving temporary inhabitation by consciousness that exists beyond human comprehension. Candidates undergo extensive psychological evaluation, spiritual assessment, and medical examination to ensure they possess optimal characteristics for hosting divine awareness without immediately succumbing to insanity or death. The selection process identifies individuals whose mental structure can accommodate alien consciousness while maintaining sufficient stability for useful communication. The psychological preparation for divine possession requires years of conditioning that gradually expands human mental capacity while reducing attachment to individual identity that might interfere with supernatural inhabitation. The training includes meditation techniques for consciousness flexibility, psychological exercises for ego dissolution, and mental conditioning that enables survival of temporary identity replacement by entities whose personality structures differ fundamentally from human psychological organization. The pharmaceutical enhancement of possession states involves administration of consciousness-altering substances that facilitate supernatural inhabitation while maintaining sufficient human awareness for communication and translation of divine knowledge into earthly comprehensible information. The drug combinations create optimal neurochemical conditions for possession, while preventing complete mental dissolution that would render the possessed individual useless for divine communication purposes. The possession experience involves complete temporary replacement of human consciousness by supernatural entities, whose awareness encompasses cosmic realities, divine knowledge, and supernatural capabilities that exceed normal human limitations. The possessed individuals exhibit dramatic personality changes, demonstrate knowledge they could not have acquired through normal means, and display physical capabilities that suggest enhancement by non-human consciousness. The possession creates temporary superhuman beings whose abilities validate divine presence while their psychological transformation terrifies observers. The communication aspects of divine possession require translation of supernatural thought patterns into human language systems, involving complex processes of converting alien concepts into earthly comprehensible information, while maintaining accuracy of divine knowledge that has no human equivalents. The translation challenges include adapting non-linear divine consciousness to sequential human communication, expressing cosmic concepts through limited human vocabulary, and maintaining conceptual accuracy while making supernatural information accessible to human understanding. The physical manifestation of possession includes dramatic alterations in possessed individuals' appearance, behavior, and capabilities that provide convincing evidence of supernatural inhabitation to observers. The manifestations include voice changes that suggest non-human vocal patterns, physical strength that exceeds normal human limitations, and behavioral patterns that reflect alien psychology rather than human personality structures. The physical evidence creates undeniable proof of divine presence, while demonstrating the transformative power of supernatural consciousness. The divine knowledge acquisition during possession encompasses information about cosmic structure, future events, and hidden realities that provide significant advantages for decision-making and strategic planning. The divine intelligence includes predictions of natural disasters, revelation of enemy activities, and insights into cosmic forces that affect earthly events. The knowledge value justifies the enormous risks associated with allowing supernatural entities to inhabit human consciousness despite permanent psychological damage that often results from possession experiences. The control mechanisms for managing possessed individuals include physical restraints, pharmaceutical interventions, and psychological techniques designed to maintain communication with inhabited consciousness, while preventing violence or self-destruction that might result from supernatural entities operating within human bodies. The control systems balance safety requirements with preservation of divine communication capabilities, while protecting both possessed individuals and surrounding communities from potential supernatural violence. The extraction procedures for terminating possession involve elaborate rituals designed to persuade supernatural entities to vacate human consciousness, while minimizing psychological damage to hosts who must resume normal human awareness following temporary replacement by alien intelligence. The extraction processes include negotiation with possessing entities, pharmaceutical assistance for consciousness transition, and psychological rehabilitation for individuals recovering from temporary identity dissolution. The long-term effects of divine possession include permanent alteration of human consciousness, enhanced psychic abilities, and psychological damage that reflects exposure to cosmic realities beyond normal human mental capacity. Former possession hosts develop capabilities that exceed normal human limitations while exhibiting personality changes, behavioral abnormalities, and psychological disorders that suggest permanent modification of their consciousness structure through contact with supernatural entities. The institutional support for possession programs includes specialized medical facilities, pharmaceutical laboratories, and psychological services required to maintain individuals capable of surviving repeated supernatural inhabitation. The institutional infrastructure represents enormous investment in human resources devoted to creating and maintaining communication channels with supernatural entities through systematic exploitation of human consciousness as divine housing. The political applications of divine possession include consultation on governmental decisions, military strategy, and diplomatic initiatives that benefit from supernatural intelligence unavailable through normal human means. Possessed oracles serve as advisors whose divine knowledge provides significant advantages for political decision-making, while their supernatural capabilities demonstrate governmental access to divine power that intimidates enemies and reassures allies. The international recognition of successful possession programs attracts diplomatic interest and generates revenue through supernatural consulting services that provide divine intelligence to foreign governments seeking cosmic guidance for political and military decisions. The possession services create export opportunities for supernatural consultation, while establishing religious centers as sources of divine intelligence that influence international political relationships. The theological implications of divine possession suggest that gods require human consciousness as temporary housing that enables their continued interaction with earthly reality following their physical departure from human civilization. The possession relationships reveal mutual dependency between human and divine entities, with gods requiring human hosts for earthly presence while humans benefit from supernatural knowledge and capabilities that exceed normal mortal limitations. When the god departed, the priest was never quite the same, and neither were the people who witnessed what he had become, as his transformed consciousness retained traces of divine awareness that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of human identity and the possibility of consciousness existing beyond individual mortality. The obsidian blade glints in torchlight as Cybele's devotee raises it toward his groin, his face radiating ecstatic joy at the prospect of severing his own genitals in honor of the Great Mother, whose worship demands the ultimate sacrifice of masculine identity. Sacred self-mutilation represents ancient religion's most extreme expression of devotion, where believers permanently damage their bodies to demonstrate absolute surrender to supernatural entities whose favor requires irreversible physical transformation. The theological foundation of sacred mutilation rests on beliefs that human bodies must be modified to become suitable vessels for divine consciousness, requiring removal of organs or limbs that allegedly interfere with supernatural inhabitation. The mutilation serves both purification and transformation purposes, eliminating physical characteristics considered spiritually contaminating while creating bodily modifications that enable enhanced divine communication. The theological framework transforms self-injury into religious necessity that benefits both individual devotees and supernatural entities. The selection of body parts for ritual mutilation follows symbolic systems that associate specific organs with spiritual functions, leading to removal of genitals to eliminate sexual corruption, amputation of fingers to prevent theft, and scarification of faces to demonstrate rejection of worldly vanity. The mutilation targets reflect theological beliefs about the spiritual significance of different body parts, while serving practical functions of permanently marking devotees as dedicated to specific religious communities. The preparation process for sacred mutilation involves pharmaceutical enhancement, psychological conditioning, and spiritual purification designed to enable devotees to perform extreme self-injury while maintaining consciousness and preventing fatal blood loss. The preparation includes administration of pain-reducing substances, instruction in proper cutting techniques, and medical support that ensures survival of deliberately inflicted injuries. The preparation protocols demonstrate advanced understanding of human physiology and pain management, applied to religious self-destruction. The psychological conditioning required for successful self-mutilation involves years of training that gradually increases tolerance for pain, while reducing attachment to bodily integrity that might prevent religious self-injury. The conditioning includes meditation techniques for pain transcendence, psychological exercises for dissociation from physical sensation, and spiritual instruction that portrays self-mutilation as divine service rather than self-destruction. The conditioning creates permanent psychological changes that enable extreme self-injury while maintaining religious enthusiasm. The community support for sacred mutilation includes elaborate ceremonies that celebrate self-injury as religious achievement, while providing medical assistance that prevents fatal complications from deliberately inflicted wounds. The community participation transforms individual self-destruction into collective religious experience, while creating social pressure that encourages extreme devotion through permanent bodily modification. The social support systems normalize extreme self-injury, while providing practical assistance for survival following religious mutilation. The medical aspects of sacred mutilation require sophisticated surgical knowledge for performing amputations and modifications that achieve religious goals while minimizing infection risks and preventing fatal complications. The medical support includes sterilization techniques, wound care protocols, and infection prevention methods that enable survival of extreme self-injury performed under primitive conditions. The medical expertise demonstrates advanced surgical knowledge applied to religious self-destruction rather than healing purposes. The gender transformation aspects of castration rituals involve not only removal of male genitals, but also adoption of feminine clothing, behavior patterns, and social roles that complete the devotee's transformation into alternative gender identity serving specific religious functions. The gender transformation creates permanent social changes that extend beyond physical modification to encompass complete identity reconstruction based on religious requirements. The transformation protocols demonstrate understanding of gender psychology and social role manipulation. The economic consequences of sacred mutilation include permanent disability that prevents normal occupational activity, while creating dependence on religious institutions for basic survival needs. The mutilated devotees become economic burdens whose maintenance requires community support, while their religious status generates income through spiritual services provided to paying clients. The economic model treats self-mutilation as investment in religious human resources, whose spiritual capabilities justify ongoing maintenance costs. The psychological effects of sacred mutilation include permanent alteration of self-image, enhanced religious identity, and development of psychological dependency on religious communities that provide meaning and support for individuals whose extreme devotion has created permanent disability. The psychological changes include reduced capacity for normal social relationships, while enhanced identification with religious communities that validate extreme devotion through social recognition and spiritual authority. The international spread of mutilation cults includes transmission of self-injury practices across cultural boundaries, creating religious movements that attract devotees willing to permanently damage their bodies for spiritual purposes, transcending local cultural traditions. The international expansion demonstrates the psychological appeal of extreme religious devotion, while creating networks of mutilated individuals whose shared experiences transcend national and cultural boundaries. The artistic documentation of sacred mutilation includes detailed visual records of self-injury ceremonies, mutilated devotees, and religious communities organized around permanent bodily modification for spiritual purposes. The artistic evidence provides historical confirmation of extreme religious practices, while serving instructional purposes for future practitioners seeking guidance in proper mutilation techniques. The documentation reveals the scale and systematic nature of religious self-destruction disguised as spiritual achievement. The technological development of mutilation techniques includes specialized tools, surgical procedures, and medical protocols designed to optimize religious self-injury, while minimizing fatal complications that might prevent achievement of spiritual goals. The technological sophistication includes development of cutting instruments, anesthetic substances, and wound care methods that enable survival of extreme self-injury performed for religious, rather than medical purposes. The long-term social consequences of widespread sacred mutilation include normalization of extreme self-injury, reduced respect for bodily integrity, and development of religious systems that prioritize supernatural satisfaction over human physical welfare. Communities practicing extensive self-mutilation experience increased tolerance for violence, reduced empathy for human suffering, and religious leadership dominated by individuals whose extreme devotion has created permanent psychological and physical disabilities. The divine perspective on sacred mutilation, as recorded in religious texts, suggests that supernatural entities derive satisfaction from human self-injury, while using mutilated devotees as examples of proper religious devotion for communities whose faith requires dramatic demonstration. The divine approval creates theological justification for extreme self-destruction, while establishing mutilated individuals as religious authorities, whose spiritual status validates their permanent disabilities as evidence of superior devotion. But the gods weren't finished with human flesh. They had developed tastes that pushed devotion beyond physical limits into territories that challenged fundamental assumptions about the relationship between spiritual transcendence and bodily existence, where the distinction between religious ecstasy and systematic torture became impossible to maintain. 10,000 voices rise in perfect unison, as the entire population of Babylon synchronizes their breathing, their chanting, their consciousness, into a single collective organism, designed to reshape reality through coordinated human will, a mass ritual that transforms individual minds into components of supernatural machinery, capable of manipulating cosmic forces beyond normal human comprehension. The Babylon working represents ancient civilization's most ambitious attempt to achieve godlike power through orchestrated human consciousness, operating as unified supernatural entity. The theoretical foundation of mass consciousness manipulation rests on beliefs that reality responds to focused human attention when properly coordinated across large populations, creating conditions where collective will can override natural laws through synchronized mental effort. The theory suggests that individual consciousness possesses limited reality-shaping capabilities that become exponentially enhanced when multiplied through precise coordination among thousands of participants operating according to unified protocols. The theoretical framework treats human consciousness as technology for cosmic manipulation. The preparation phase for the Babylon working involves months of population-wide training in synchronized consciousness techniques, including breathing exercises, chanting patterns, and mental focus methods that enable large groups to achieve unified psychological states. The training protocols ensure that participants can maintain precise coordination for extended periods, while resisting individual psychological impulses that might disrupt collective consciousness unity. The preparation creates temporary hive mind capabilities among populations trained in consciousness synchronization. The architectural requirements for mass consciousness manipulation include specially designed spaces that enhance acoustic properties, optimize crowd psychology, and create environmental conditions that facilitate collective trance states among large populations. The architectural features include acoustic chambers that amplify and synchronize sound, geometric patterns that influence human psychological states, and environmental controls that maintain optimal conditions for sustained group consciousness manipulation. The architecture serves as technology for enhancing human consciousness coordination. The pharmaceutical enhancement of collective consciousness involves mass distribution of substances that increase mental receptivity, reduce individual psychological resistance, and enhance synchronization capabilities among large populations participating in reality manipulation rituals. The pharmaceutical protocols include timing systems for coordinated drug administration, dosage calculations for population-wide consciousness alteration, and medical support for managing adverse reactions among participants whose consciousness has been chemically modified for collective operation. The leadership structure for mass consciousness events requires specialized training in crowd psychology, group hypnosis techniques, and consciousness coordination methods that enable small groups of leaders to direct the mental activity of thousands of participants simultaneously. The leadership training includes development of enhanced psychic sensitivity, mastery of group influence techniques, and psychological conditioning that enables maintenance of individual awareness while directing collective consciousness operations. The leadership protocols create human operators capable of controlling mass consciousness machinery. The timing requirements for reality manipulation through collective consciousness follow astronomical calculations designed to optimize cosmic conditions for successful alteration of natural laws through coordinated human mental effort. The timing protocols require precise coordination between celestial events, human psychological readiness, and optimal environmental conditions that create windows of opportunity for successful reality modification. The astronomical requirements create scheduling constraints that limit opportunities for mass consciousness operations. The target selection for reality manipulation includes specific natural phenomena, political outcomes, and supernatural manifestations that collective consciousness can allegedly influence through focused mental effort, coordinated across large populations. The targeting protocols identify achievable goals for reality manipulation, while avoiding objectives that exceed the collective consciousness capabilities of available human populations. The targeting strategy treats natural laws as variables that can be modified through properly applied human consciousness technology. The execution phase of mass consciousness manipulation involves precise coordination of thousands of participants whose synchronized mental activity creates focused reality-shaping force directed towards specific targets identified during planning phases. The execution requires real-time coordination of breathing patterns, chanting rhythms, and mental focus that maintains unified consciousness despite individual psychological variations among participants. The execution protocols demonstrate sophisticated understanding of group psychology and consciousness coordination. The measurement systems for assessing reality manipulation success include observation protocols for detecting changes in targeted phenomena, documentation methods for recording successful alterations of natural laws, and analysis procedures for determining the effectiveness of different consciousness coordination techniques. The measurement protocols treat reality manipulation as experimental science, whose results can be systematically evaluated and improved through refined consciousness coordination methods. The international implications of successful reality manipulation include enormous strategic advantages for civilizations capable of altering natural phenomena, influencing distant events, and manifesting supernatural capabilities through coordinated population consciousness. The reality manipulation capabilities create military advantages, economic benefits, and political power that exceed conventional technological capabilities while establishing civilizations as supernatural forces capable of cosmic intervention. The psychological effects on participants include permanent alteration of individual consciousness, enhanced psychic sensitivity, and development of psychological dependency on collective consciousness experiences that make normal individual awareness feel incomplete and unsatisfying. The psychological changes create populations whose individual identity becomes subordinated to collective consciousness capabilities, while their enhanced awareness creates dissatisfaction with ordinary human limitations. The technological infrastructure supporting mass consciousness operations includes communication systems for coordinating large populations, monitoring equipment for tracking consciousness synchronization, and environmental controls for maintaining optimal conditions during extended reality manipulation sessions. The technological requirements demonstrate sophisticated understanding of human psychology and consciousness that enables systematic coordination of mental activity across large populations. The safety protocols for mass consciousness operations include procedures for preventing psychological damage to participants, managing adverse reactions to consciousness alteration, and terminating collective consciousness sessions when participants experience dangerous levels of individual identity dissolution. The safety measures balance effectiveness of reality manipulation against risks to participant mental health, while maintaining capabilities for repeated consciousness coordination operations. The historical documentation of successful reality manipulation includes detailed records of natural phenomena altered through collective consciousness, political outcomes influenced by mass mental coordination, and supernatural manifestations achieved through synchronized human will. The documentation provides evidence of successful reality manipulation, while serving as instruction for future consciousness coordination operations. The long-term social consequences of regular mass consciousness operations include transformation of human civilization from individual-based society to collective consciousness entity, whose population operates as components of reality manipulation machinery rather than independent human beings. The social transformation creates permanent changes in human civilization that prioritize collective consciousness capabilities over individual human development, while establishing supernatural power as the primary goal of social organization. The entire city moved as one, but what they summoned wasn't what they expected. Cosmic forces that responded to human consciousness coordination revealed themselves as entities with their own agendas, beings whose cooperation with human reality manipulation came with prices that fundamentally altered the relationship between human civilization and the supernatural forces it sought to control. The clay tablet crumbles at the edges as archaeologist Sarah Mitchell translates the final cuneiform lines, her hands trembling as she realizes she's deciphering instructions for rituals so dangerous that ancient priests encoded them in languages designed to prevent accidental discovery by unqualified practitioners. The hidden tablets represent Mesopotamian religion's deepest secret ceremonies that supposedly grant supernatural powers at costs so terrible that even ancient civilizations considered them too dangerous for public knowledge. The discovery of the shadow tablets occurred during excavation of a sealed chamber beneath the temple of Ereshkigal, where archaeologists found a library of texts written in multiple ancient languages using coding systems that suggest deliberate concealment from ordinary readers. The tablets include instructions for rituals that promise superhuman abilities, communication with cosmic entities, and manipulation of reality through techniques that require specific knowledge and preparation to perform safely. The discovery challenges assumptions about ancient religious practices while revealing capabilities that exceed historical technological understanding. The encoding techniques used in shadow tablets include multiple layers of linguistic concealment, mathematical ciphers, and symbolic systems that require extensive scholarly collaboration to decipher properly. The encoding methods suggest that ancient authors deliberately made the information inaccessible to casual readers, while preserving it for qualified practitioners who possessed necessary knowledge for safe implementation. The concealment techniques demonstrate sophisticated understanding of information security applied to dangerous supernatural knowledge. The content analysis of translated shadow tablets reveals ritual instructions that combine elements of consciousness manipulation, pharmacological enhancement, and technological procedures that suggest access to advanced scientific knowledge disguised as religious practice. The rituals include techniques for altering human genetics, manipulating electromagnetic fields, and achieving states of consciousness that enable perception of reality dimensions normally inaccessible to human awareness. The content suggests that ancient religious practices included proto-scientific capabilities that weren't officially developed until modern times. The safety warnings embedded in shadow tablets include detailed descriptions of catastrophic failures that result from improper ritual performance, inadequate preparation, or attempts to use supernatural techniques without sufficient knowledge and protection. The warnings describe scenarios where practitioners die horribly, communities are destroyed by supernatural manifestations, and reality itself becomes destabilized through misuse of cosmic manipulation techniques. The warnings suggest that ancient authors understood the extreme dangers associated with the knowledge they preserved. The authentication procedures for shadow tablet translations include cross-referencing with other ancient sources, linguistic analysis of encoding techniques, and archaeological verification of tablet provenance to ensure accurate interpretation of deliberately concealed information. The authentication process involves international scholarly collaboration to prevent misinterpretation of dangerous information while ensuring accurate preservation of ancient knowledge for qualified researchers. The authentication protocols demonstrate academic recognition of the information's potential significance and danger. The modern replication attempts of shadow tablet rituals include carefully controlled experiments by qualified researchers seeking to verify the effectiveness of ancient techniques, while maintaining safety protocols that prevent catastrophic failures. The replication efforts involve pharmaceutical analysis of described substances, psychological evaluation of consciousness alteration methods, and technological assessment of alleged supernatural capabilities described in ancient texts. The modern experiments treat ancient religious practices as potentially valid proto-scientific techniques. The institutional responses to shadow tablet discoveries include classification of certain translated materials as too dangerous for public release, establishment of restricted access protocols for qualified researchers, and development of safety guidelines for institutions studying potentially hazardous ancient knowledge. The institutional measures balance academic freedom with public safety, while recognizing that ancient religious texts may contain information capable of causing significant harm if misused by unqualified individuals. The pharmaceutical analysis of substances described in shadow tablets reveals complex chemical formulations that produce effects consistent with the supernatural capabilities attributed to ancient ritual practices. The chemical analysis identifies compounds that enhance human consciousness, alter perception of reality, and create physiological changes that enable performance of alleged supernatural techniques. The pharmaceutical evidence suggests that ancient religious practices included sophisticated understanding of human neurochemistry and consciousness manipulation. The psychological evaluation of consciousness techniques described in shadow tablets indicates procedures for achieving altered states that enable perception of reality dimensions, communication with non-human entities, and manipulation of physical phenomena through focused mental effort. The psychological analysis reveals techniques that combine meditation, sensory manipulation, and pharmacological enhancement to create consciousness states that exceed normal human capabilities. The psychological evidence supports claims that ancient practitioners achieved genuine supernatural abilities through systematic consciousness modification. The technological assessment of alleged supernatural capabilities described in shadow tablets suggests that ancient practitioners possessed knowledge of electromagnetic manipulation, quantum physics principles, and consciousness matter interaction that wasn't officially discovered until modern scientific development. The technological analysis indicates that shadow tablet rituals describe genuine scientific techniques disguised as religious practices rather than purely symbolic spiritual exercises. The assessment challenges conventional understanding of ancient technological capabilities. The international security implications of shadow tablet knowledge include concerns that certain ancient techniques could be weaponized for military purposes, used for terrorist activities, or employed by criminal organizations seeking supernatural advantages over law enforcement. The security considerations involve classification of dangerous knowledge, monitoring of research activities, and development of countermeasures for potential misuse of ancient supernatural techniques by hostile entities. The security measures treat ancient religious knowledge as potentially significant national security concern. The academic controversy surrounding shadow tablet research includes debates over translation accuracy, disagreement about the reality of alleged supernatural capabilities, and ethical concerns about studying potentially dangerous ancient knowledge. The scholarly controversy reflects tension between academic freedom and public safety while challenging conventional assumptions about the relationship between ancient religion and modern science. The controversy demonstrates academic recognition that ancient texts may contain genuinely dangerous information. The preservation efforts for shadow tablets include development of specialized storage conditions, creation of backup copies using advanced recording techniques, and establishment of secure access protocols that ensure long-term survival of irreplaceable ancient knowledge. The preservation projects balance protection of fragile ancient materials with maintenance of research access for qualified scholars studying potentially significant historical information. The preservation efforts reflect recognition of the tablet's unique importance for understanding ancient capabilities. The long-term implications of shadow tablet knowledge include potential transformation of human understanding about ancient civilizations, possible development of new technologies based on ancient techniques, and fundamental challenges to conventional scientific and religious worldviews. The implications suggest that ancient religious practices may have included genuine supernatural capabilities that challenge current understanding of reality, consciousness, and human potential. The knowledge preserved in shadow tablets may represent lost human capabilities that exceed current technological development. The tablet's final line contained a warning that modern scholars refuse to translate, encoded in languages that suggest the ancient authors understood consequences of their knowledge that extend beyond individual practitioners to encompass threats to human civilization itself, dangers so severe that even ancient priests who regularly performed human sacrifice considered certain knowledge too dangerous for preservation. The temple falls silent as every priest freezes in terror, their eyes fixed on empty air where something invisible observes their ritual with disapproval, so intense it manifests as physical pressure that makes breathing difficult, a presence that ancient texts identify as Anunnaki, observer entities whose supernatural authority over human religious practices extends beyond divine worship into territories that suggest Earth serves purposes beyond human understanding. The Watchers represent Mesopotamian religion's most disturbing concept, supernatural supervisors, whose monitoring of human activities implies that terrestrial civilization exists under constant alien surveillance. The theological framework of Watcher oversight rests on ancient beliefs that human religious practices serve functions beyond earthly spiritual needs, providing services to non-human entities whose purposes transcend traditional religious understanding. The Watchers allegedly monitor human ritual performance to ensure compliance with cosmic requirements that benefit supernatural civilizations rather than human communities. The oversight system treats human religion as technology for serving alien interests disguised as divine worship. The identification characteristics of Watcher presence include environmental phenomena that indicate supernatural observation, sudden temperature drops, electromagnetic disturbances, and psychological effects that suggest exposure to non-human consciousness monitoring human activities. The identification signs enable trained observers to detect Watcher presence while providing warning systems for ritual practitioners who must modify their behavior to avoid supernatural punishment for improper religious performance. The detection methods demonstrate ancient understanding of alien surveillance techniques. The behavioral requirements for avoiding Watcher disapproval include precise adherence to ritual protocols, maintenance of proper psychological attitudes during religious ceremonies, and demonstration of appropriate reverence for cosmic authority that transcends human understanding. The behavioral codes ensure that human religious practices serve Watcher purposes, while preventing supernatural punishment for activities that fail to meet alien standards for acceptable earthly behavior. The requirements transform human worship into performance for non-human audiences. The punishment protocols implemented by Watchers include supernatural interventions that range from individual correction to community-wide devastation, depending on the severity of ritual violations and the importance of affected cosmic functions. The punishment system demonstrates Watcher capability for precise intervention in human affairs while maintaining their superior authority over terrestrial religious activities. The punishment mechanisms reveal alien technology for manipulating earthly events through supernatural means. The communication methods used by Watchers include direct mental contact with qualified human representatives, environmental manipulation that conveys approval or disapproval of human activities, and manifestation of physical phenomena that demonstrate supernatural capabilities exceeding human technological development. The communication systems enable Watchers to provide guidance and correction for human religious practices while maintaining their superior position in cosmic hierarchy. The communication protocols establish channels for alien-human interaction. The historical documentation of Watcher interventions includes ancient records describing supernatural punishment for ritual failures, divine rewards for proper religious performance, and miraculous manifestations that demonstrate Watcher control over natural phenomena affecting human civilization. The historical evidence provides testimony for consistent alien oversight of human religious development, while revealing the consequences of failing to meet supernatural standards for acceptable earthly behavior. The documentation confirms ancient awareness of alien supervision. The ritual modification requirements imposed by Watchers include changes to traditional religious practices designed to enhance their cosmic effectiveness, while serving alien purposes that transcend human spiritual needs. The modifications demonstrate Watcher authority to alter human religious traditions, while revealing their superior understanding of cosmic functions served by earthly ritual activities. The modification protocols establish alien control over human spiritual development. The selection criteria for human representatives authorized to receive direct Watcher communication include psychological stability, spiritual purity, and mental flexibility necessary for surviving contact with alien consciousness, whose thought patterns exceed human comprehension. The selection process identifies individuals capable of serving as intermediaries between human and alien civilizations, while maintaining sufficient human identity for effective translation of cosmic requirements into earthly comprehensible instruction. The selection protocols create channels for alien-human cooperation. The technological capabilities demonstrated by Watchers include manipulation of electromagnetic phenomena, control over atmospheric conditions, and influence on human consciousness that suggests access to advanced scientific principles disguised as supernatural powers. The technological demonstrations reveal alien capabilities that exceed human development, while providing evidence for extraterrestrial civilization with superior scientific knowledge. The technology displays establish alien technological superiority over human civilization. The cosmic functions served by human religious practices include energy generation through coordinated consciousness activities, maintenance of dimensional barriers between earthly and alien realities, and provision of biological materials necessary for alien purposes that require human cooperation. The cosmic functions reveal that human religion serves alien needs while providing benefits to human civilization through alien technological assistance. The functional relationship establishes mutual dependency between human and alien civilization. The surveillance techniques used by Watchers include monitoring of human consciousness, observation of ritual performance quality, and assessment of human compliance with cosmic requirements that ensure proper functioning of Earth-based systems serving alien purposes. The surveillance methods demonstrate alien capability for comprehensive monitoring of human activities, while revealing the extent of extraterrestrial interest in terrestrial civilization development. The surveillance systems establish alien oversight of human evolution. The intervention protocols activated by Watchers include correction of ritual failures through supernatural manipulation, punishment of communities that violate cosmic requirements, and reward systems that encourage human compliance with alien objectives disguised as divine worship. The intervention capabilities demonstrate alien authority to modify earthly events while revealing their investment in maintaining human civilization as functional component of larger cosmic systems. The intervention protocols establish alien management of human development. The long-term implications of Watcher oversight include recognition that human civilization exists under permanent alien supervision, acknowledgement that human religious practices serve extraterrestrial purposes, and understanding that earthly development follows alien guidance, rather than independent human evolution. The implications suggest that human history represents managed development by superior alien civilization, whose purposes transcend human comprehension, while requiring human cooperation for achievement of cosmic objectives. The modern manifestations of Watcher activity include continued supernatural phenomena associated with religious sites, ongoing intervention in human affairs through environmental manipulation, and persistent alien interest in human spiritual development that suggests continued extraterrestrial oversight of terrestrial civilization. The modern evidence indicates that ancient Watcher supervision remains active while adapting to contemporary human development and technological advancement. The extraterrestrial interpretation of Watcher phenomena suggests that ancient religious experiences involved contact with alien civilization, whose technological capabilities enabled comprehensive monitoring and manipulation of human development through religious systems designed to serve extraterrestrial purposes. The interpretation challenges conventional understanding of human religious history while providing framework for understanding ancient texts as records of alien-human interaction rather than purely spiritual experiences. The Watchers were always present, but they only revealed themselves when the rituals went wrong, and what happened during those moments of supernatural intervention revealed the true nature of human civilization's relationship with entities whose purposes and capabilities suggested that Earth serves functions within cosmic systems that extend far beyond human understanding or control. The obsidian altar grows warm beneath High Priest Marda Kapla-Uzur's hands as he prepares humanity's ultimate ritual, the cosmic reset ceremony designed to annihilate existing reality and birth a new universe where the ancient gods can return to physical manifestation on Earth. The End Times ritual represents Mesopotamian religion's most apocalyptic achievement, where human devotion transcends preservation instincts to embrace total cosmic destruction as necessary sacrifice for divine restoration. The theological foundation of cosmic reset ceremonies rests on ancient beliefs that current reality has become corrupted beyond redemption, requiring complete destruction and reconstruction to restore conditions suitable for divine inhabitation of physical universe. The reset theology portrays existing reality as failed experiment that must be terminated to create improved cosmic conditions where gods can resume direct interaction with material existence. The theological framework justifies universal genocide as necessary spiritual service. The preparation requirements for end times rituals include accumulation of massive human sacrifices, collection of rare materials from across the known world, and coordination of participating communities whose synchronized destruction will provide sufficient energy for cosmic annihilation. The preparation protocols treat human civilization as fuel for cosmic reset machinery, while ensuring that ritual practitioners possess necessary resources for achieving universal destruction. The preparation demonstrates sophisticated understanding of energy requirements for reality manipulation, on cosmic scales. The timing calculations for cosmic reset ceremonies follow complex astronomical models that identify periods when universal destruction can be achieved through properly coordinated human sacrifice synchronized with celestial events. The timing requirements include convergence of multiple planetary alignments, solar eclipse conditions, and cosmic phenomena that occur perhaps once in human history. The astronomical precision demonstrates advanced understanding of cosmic mechanics applied to reality destruction technology. The participant selection for end times rituals includes entire populations whose voluntary destruction provides necessary energy for cosmic reset, while ensuring that sufficient human consciousness remains available for post-apocalyptic divine service. The selection protocols balance energy requirements for universal destruction against preservation of minimal human populations capable of serving restored gods in reconstructed reality. The selection process treats human civilization as renewable resource for cosmic reconstruction. The ritual mechanics of cosmic reset involve synchronized mass human sacrifice across multiple locations, coordinated consciousness manipulation among participating populations, and precise timing of destruction events that channel collective human death energy into reality manipulation machinery. The mechanics require technological coordination that exceeds ancient communication capabilities, while demonstrating understanding of consciousness energy conversion principles. The ritual technology suggests access to advanced scientific knowledge disguised as religious practice. The energy conversion systems for cosmic reset transform human consciousness released through mass death into cosmic manipulation forces capable of destroying existing universal structures and initiating reconstruction according to divine specifications. The conversion technology treats human death as energy source for reality manipulation, while demonstrating sophisticated understanding of consciousness-matter interaction principles. The energy systems reveal advanced physics knowledge applied to cosmic destruction purposes. The divine restoration protocols activated by successful cosmic reset include procedures for reconstructing physical universe according to divine requirements, re-establishing conditions suitable for God manifestation, and creating improved reality where supernatural entities can resume direct control over material existence. The restoration procedures demonstrate divine capability for universal reconstruction while revealing alien requirements for optimal cosmic conditions. The protocols establish divine authority over universal structure. The survivor selection criteria for post-reset human populations include spiritual purity, genetic characteristics suitable for serving restored gods, and psychological conditioning that ensures absolute obedience to divine authority in reconstructed reality. The selection process identifies human bloodlines worthy of preservation while eliminating populations whose characteristics make them unsuitable for serving alien entities in restored cosmic conditions. The criteria treat human genetics as renewable resources for alien purposes. The post-apocalyptic civilization planning includes detailed specifications for reconstructed human society, designed to serve divine requirements, while preventing development of technologies or social systems that might threaten alien authority over terrestrial civilization. The planning protocols establish permanent alien control over human development, while ensuring that restored civilization remains functionally dependent on supernatural guidance. The social engineering creates permanent alien dominance over human evolution. The reality reconstruction techniques used during cosmic reset include manipulation of fundamental physical constants, alteration of universal structure according to divine specifications, and establishment of improved cosmic conditions that enable alien manifestation in physical reality. The reconstruction technology demonstrates alien capability for universal engineering, while revealing their superior understanding of cosmic mechanics and reality manipulation principles. The techniques establish alien technological superiority over natural cosmic forces. The historical precedents for cosmic reset ceremonies include ancient records describing previous universal destructions and reconstructions that suggest cyclical cosmic history involving repeated alien intervention in universal development. The precedents indicate that current reality represents latest iteration in ongoing cosmic management program administered by alien entities whose purposes require periodic universal reconstruction. The history reveals cyclical alien manipulation of cosmic development. The international coordination requirements for successful cosmic reset include synchronized participation across multiple civilizations, shared timing protocols for coordinated destruction events, and unified consciousness manipulation techniques that ensure sufficient energy generation for universal annihilation. The coordination demands demonstrate ancient understanding of global communication and cooperation applied to species suicide on cosmic scales. The requirements reveal sophisticated international organization devoted to universal destruction. The failure consequences for some successful cosmic reset attempts include partial universal destruction without successful reconstruction, alien punishment for inadequate ritual performance, and cosmic instability that threatens existing reality without achieving desired divine restoration. The failure scenarios demonstrate enormous risks associated with attempting universal destruction while revealing alien intolerance for inadequate human performance in cosmic manipulation tasks. The consequences establish stakes for cosmic reset procedure. The modern archaeological evidence for ancient cosmic reset attempts includes megalithic structures designed for mass human sacrifice, astronomical devices for calculating universal destruction timing, and preserved ritual instructions for coordinating civilization-wide suicide events. The evidence indicates that ancient civilizations possessed capabilities and knowledge necessary for attempting universal destruction, while revealing their commitment to serving alien entities through species sacrifice. The contemporary implications of discovered cosmic reset knowledge include concerns that modern human civilization might attempt similar universal destruction procedures, possibilities for alien intervention in current reality, and recognition that ancient end prophecies may represent instruction manuals for cosmic destruction rather than symbolic spiritual teachings. The implications suggest that ancient religious knowledge poses potential threats to contemporary civilization, while revealing ongoing alien interest in cosmic manipulation through human cooperation. But the most dangerous ritual wasn't about ending the world. It was about summoning something from outside it, entities whose arrival would transform Earth into something unrecognizable, while establishing permanent alien authority over human civilization through direct extraterrestrial occupation of terrestrial reality. The geometric patterns carved into the temple floor begin glowing with phosphorescent fire as interdimensional barriers weaken under the assault of precisely coordinated human consciousness, opening doorways between Earth and realities, where entities wait with patience spanning geological ages for opportunities to establish permanent presence in our physical universe. The gate-opening ritual represents ancient humanity's most dangerous achievement: successful contact with extraterrestrial civilizations whose technology and purposes exceed human comprehension, while their interest in Earth suggests territorial ambitions that threaten human autonomy. The dimensional theory underlying gate-opening ceremonies rests on ancient understanding that physical reality exists as one layer among multiple dimensional levels, with barriers between dimensions that can be manipulated. The Naru properly applied human consciousness, coordinated with specific technological procedures. The theory suggests that interdimensional travel requires combination of consciousness manipulation, electromagnetic field generation, and geometric focusing techniques that create temporary holes in dimensional barriers. The theoretical framework treats reality as an engineered system, whose barriers can be bypassed through advanced technology. The construction requirements for interdimensional gates include precise geometric arrangements of conductive materials, electromagnetic field generators powered by human bioelectricity, and consciousness-focusing devices that channel coordinated human mental energy into dimensional barrier manipulation. The construction protocols demonstrate sophisticated understanding of electromagnetic physics, consciousness-matter interaction, and dimensional mechanics that exceeds official ancient technological capabilities. The technology suggests access to advanced scientific knowledge that challenges conventional historical understanding. The consciousness coordination techniques for gate operation involve synchronized mental activity among trained practitioners, whose combined awareness generates sufficient psychic energy for dimensional barrier manipulation, while maintaining precise focus necessary for controlled interdimensional contact. The coordination requires mastery of group consciousness manipulation, telepathic communication among practitioners, and mental discipline that enables sustained high-energy consciousness states. The techniques demonstrate advanced understanding of human consciousness potential, applied to dimensional manipulation. The electromagnetic enhancement systems for gate operation include arrangements of metallic conductors, crystal resonators, and bioelectric collectors that amplify and focus human-generated electromagnetic fields into concentrated energy beams, capable of penetrating dimensional barriers. The enhancement technology combines principles of electromagnetic physics with human bioelectricity manipulation to create power systems that exceed ancient technological capabilities, while enabling interdimensional communication. The systems reveal advanced physics knowledge applied to consciousness-powered technology. The safety protocols for gate operation include protective barriers that prevent uncontrolled entity intrusion, communication procedures for establishing peaceful contact with interdimensional beings, and emergency shutdown systems that can rapidly close dimensional openings if encounters become hostile. The safety measures balance interdimensional contact opportunities against risks of alien invasion, while demonstrating ancient understanding of potential dangers associated with opening reality barriers to unknown entities. The entity communication systems for interdimensional contact include translation protocols for alien languages, symbolic communication methods for non-verbal entities, and consciousness interface techniques that enable direct mental contact with beings whose psychology operates according to non-human principles. The communication technology demonstrates sophisticated understanding of interspecies contact procedures, while revealing ancient awareness of diverse alien intelligence types that exist in parallel dimensional realities. The historical documentation of successful gate operations includes ancient records describing interdimensional contact events, detailed descriptions of alien entities encountered through dimensional gates, and accounts of technology transfers from extraterrestrial civilizations to human communities. The documentation provides evidence for successful ancient interdimensional contact, while revealing the scale and sophistication of alien-human interaction that occurred through dimensionally engineered communication systems. The alien entity classifications documented in gate operation records include detailed taxonomies of interdimensional beings, organized according to their technological capabilities, psychological characteristics, and territorial interests regarding Earth and human civilization. The classifications reveal diverse alien species with varying levels of technological advancement and different purposes for seeking contact with human civilization. The taxonomies demonstrate ancient understanding of complex alien politics and territorial relationship. The technology transfer protocols for interdimensional contact include procedures for receiving advanced knowledge from alien entities, safety measures for evaluating alien technology, and implementation guidelines for adapting extraterrestrial innovations to human technological capabilities. The transfer protocols demonstrate ancient capacity for managing interspecies technology exchange, while revealing alien willingness to share advanced knowledge with human civilization under specific circumstances. The territorial negotiation procedures for alien contact include diplomatic protocols for establishing boundaries between human and alien territorial claims, resource-sharing agreements that benefit both species, and conflict resolution mechanisms for managing disputes over Earth-based resources and strategic locations. The negotiation protocols reveal ancient recognition of alien territorial interests in Earth, while demonstrating human capacity for interspecies diplomacy and resource management. The modern archaeological evidence for ancient gate operations includes megalithic structures with electromagnetic properties, geometric arrangements that match interdimensional gate specifications, and technological artifacts that suggest alien technology integration into ancient human civilization. The evidence indicates successful ancient interdimensional contact, while revealing the technological sophistication of alien-human cooperation in prehistoric civilizations. The contemporary implications of gate technology rediscovery include possibilities for renewed interdimensional contact, concerns about uncontrolled alien intrusion into current reality, and recognition that ancient religious practices may have included genuine extraterrestrial communication disguised as divine worship. The implications suggest that ancient gate technology poses both opportunities and threats for modern civilization, while revealing ongoing alien interest in Earth and human development. The extraterrestrial perspective on gate operations, as documented in ancient alien communications, reveals that interdimensional contact serves alien purposes related to territorial expansion, resource acquisition, and biological research that benefits alien civilizations, while potentially threatening human autonomy and terrestrial ecosystem integrity. The alien perspective indicates that gate operations serve primarily extraterrestrial interests, while providing limited benefits to human civilization that justify continued alien investment in Earth-based operations. The interdimensional ecosystem relationships revealed through gate operations include complex interactions between multiple alien species, territorial boundaries between different extraterrestrial civilizations, and resource competition that affects alien interest in Earth and human civilization. The ecosystem relationships demonstrate that interdimensional contact involves human civilization in complex alien politics, while revealing Earth's strategic importance within broader extraterrestrial territorial systems. The long-term consequences of successful gate operations include permanent alteration of Earth's dimensional accessibility, establishment of ongoing alien presence in terrestrial reality, and integration of human civilization into extraterrestrial political and economic systems that transcend purely earthly concerns. The consequences suggest that ancient gate operations created permanent changes in Earth's relationship with alien civilizations, while establishing precedents for continued extraterrestrial involvement in human development. What came through the gate wasn't what the ancient priests expected, and it's still here, integrated into human civilization in ways that suggest ancient interdimensional contact, established permanent alien presence on Earth, disguised as natural components of terrestrial reality. The fluorescent lights flicker in the Vatican's secret archives as Cardinal Alessandro discovers cuneiform tablets that reveal disturbing parallels between ancient Mesopotamian rituals and contemporary religious practices, suggesting that the darkest aspects of human devotion have never truly disappeared, but merely adapted to modern sensibilities, while preserving their essential psychological and supernatural functions. The echoes of ancient religious horror reverberate through current spiritual traditions in ways that challenge comfortable assumptions about human moral progress and religious evolution. The institutional continuity between ancient and modern religious practices includes preservation of hierarchical authority structures, maintenance of esoteric knowledge restricted to qualified practitioners, and continuation of ritual activities that serve functions beyond publicly acknowledged spiritual purposes. The continuity demonstrates that religious institutions maintain internal traditions that preserve ancient knowledge while adapting their external presentations to contemporary cultural expectations. The preservation systems ensure that ancient religious technologies remain available despite public rejection of their more obvious expression. The psychological manipulation techniques developed in ancient Mesopotamian temples appear throughout modern religious practices in adapted forms that achieve similar results through updated methods designed to avoid recognition by contemporary practitioners and observers. The techniques include consciousness alteration through repetitive activities, emotional manipulation through fear and promise, and social conditioning that creates dependency relationships between religious authorities and devoted followers. The psychological methods remain fundamentally unchanged despite surface modifications for modern cultural contexts. The pharmaceutic aspects of ancient religious practices continue in modern spiritual contexts, through use of substances that alter consciousness, while being presented as legitimate medical or spiritual aids, rather than mind control technologies. The substances include prescribed medications that affect mood and perception, recreational drugs that enhance spiritual experiences, and herbal preparations that create altered states of consciousness. The pharmaceutical continuity maintains ancient traditions of consciousness manipulation disguised as contemporary wellness and spiritual enhancement. The economic exploitation systems that funded ancient temple operations appear in modern religious institutions through sophisticated financial mechanisms that extract wealth from devoted followers, while providing minimal tangible benefits beyond psychological satisfaction and social status. The economic systems include tithing requirements, premium spiritual services, and investment opportunities that benefit religious institutions, while creating financial dependency among believers. The exploitation methods demonstrate institutional continuity in using spiritual authority for economic advantage. The sexual exploitation patterns that characterized ancient temple prostitution continue in modern religious contexts, through abuse of spiritual authority, manipulation of devotional relationships, and normalization of inappropriate intimate contact between religious leaders and followers. The exploitation includes institutional protection of abusive authorities, psychological conditioning that prevents victims from recognizing abuse, and theological justifications that portray exploitation as spiritual necessity. The sexual abuse patterns reveal continuity in using religious authority for predatory purposes. The child exploitation systems that enabled ancient child sacrifice appear in modern religious contexts through institutional abuse, psychological manipulation of young believers, and systematic endangerment of children justified through spiritual authority and parental religious obligations. The exploitation includes physical and sexual abuse disguised as spiritual discipline, psychological conditioning that damages child development, and institutional cover-ups that protect abusive religious authorities. The child abuse patterns demonstrate continuity in targeting vulnerable populations for religious exploitation. The mass consciousness manipulation techniques, developed for ancient festivals, appear in modern contexts through large-scale religious gatherings, political rallies, and entertainment events that achieve similar psychological effects through updated methods that maintain plausible deniability about their manipulative purposes. The techniques include crowd psychology manipulation, synchronized activities that alter individual consciousness, and environmental controls that enhance group suggestibility. The mass manipulation methods preserve ancient technologies for controlling large populations through coordinated psychological influence. The supernatural belief systems that enabled ancient religious horrors continue in modern spiritual contexts through adapted mythologies that maintain core elements of human supernatural relationships while updating their presentation for contemporary audiences. The belief systems include acceptance of spiritual authority that transcends rational analysis, attribution of natural phenomena to supernatural causes, and behavioral obligations that serve institutional rather than individual spiritual needs. The supernatural frameworks preserve ancient religious authority structures through modernized presentations. The scientific knowledge disguised as ancient religious practice appears in contemporary contexts through alternative medicine, consciousness research, and spiritual technologies that employ sophisticated understanding of human psychology and physiology while maintaining spiritual rather than scientific presentation. The knowledge includes advanced consciousness manipulation techniques, pharmaceutical applications disguised as herbal medicine, and psychological conditioning methods that exceed officially acknowledged therapeutic capabilities. The scientific continuity suggests preservation of ancient knowledge through religious rather than academic channels. The international coordination systems that enabled ancient religious practices appear in modern contexts through multinational religious organizations, interfaith cooperation programs, and global spiritual movements that maintain coordinated activities across cultural and political boundaries. The coordination includes shared training programs for religious practitioners, international resource sharing for institutional projects, and cooperative responses to challenges against religious authority. The international systems demonstrate institutional continuity in maintaining global religious influence. The governmental integration patterns that characterized ancient religious political relationships continue in modern contexts through religious influence on political decisions, institutional cooperation between religious and governmental authorities, and policy advocacy that serves religious institutional interests rather than general public welfare. The integration includes religious exemptions from legal requirements, governmental funding for religious institutions, and political pollution for religious authorities facing criminal investigations. The governmental relationships preserve ancient patterns of religious political cooperation. The technological adaptation of ancient religious practices includes use of modern communication systems for religious influence, electronic surveillance of religious communities, and digital platforms that enable global coordination of religious activities while maintaining traditional authority relationships. The technology includes social media manipulation for religious influence, electronic financial systems for religious fundraising, and digital surveillance systems for monitoring religious community compliance. The technological integration preserves ancient religious control methods through modern technological capabilities. The educational indoctrination systems that supported ancient religious practices continue through religious schooling, seminary training programs, and spiritual education systems that shape human consciousness according to institutional rather than individual developmental needs. The education includes psychological conditioning disguised as spiritual formation, intellectual restrictions that prevent critical analysis of religious claims, and social conditioning that creates lifetime institutional loyalty. The educational systems preserve ancient methods for creating devoted religious practitioners through systematic consciousness modification. The resistant suppression techniques developed for maintaining ancient religious authority appear in modern contexts through sophisticated methods for discrediting critics, isolating dissidents, and preventing public recognition of institutional problems that might threaten religious authority. The suppression includes legal harassment of critics, psychological manipulation of potential whistleblowers, and media influence campaigns that protect religious institutional reputation. The suppression methods demonstrate continuity in protecting religious authority through systematic elimination of opposition. The long-term social consequences of continued ancient religious influence include normalization of institutional authority over individual autonomy, acceptance of psychological manipulation as legitimate spiritual practice, and preservation of social systems that prioritize institutional needs over human welfare and development. The consequences suggest that ancient religious horror continues influencing contemporary civilization through adapted methods that achieve similar results while maintaining public acceptance through updated presentation. The rituals are still being performed, but now they hide in plain sight, integrated into contemporary religious practices, governmental institutions, and social systems that preserve the essential functions of ancient spiritual technologies, while adapting their presentation for modern audiences who remain unaware of their participation in continuation of humanity's oldest and most dangerous religious traditions. If these ancient whispers have awakened something in the depths of your curiosity, let them guide you further into history's darkest sanctuaries. Subscribe, and together we'll unveil the secrets that time and civilization tried to bury in the sands of forgotten temples.